My son screamed at me to stop wasting his inheritance on a vintage record player. He stood over me, his face twisted with a greed I didn't recognize, and told me I was too old to be spending money. He didn't know that the platinum card in his wallet, the mortgage on his McMansion, and the lease on his Porsche were all linked to my master account. He wanted me to stop spending. Fine. I cut the cord. I emptied the accounts. I vanished. And when I resurfaced, he was facing a federal judge, and I was sitting in the front row, smiling. Before I tell you how I taught my ungrateful family the ultimate lesson, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that respect goes both ways and that generosity has its limits. My name is Otis Jefferson. I am 75 years old. To the world, and especially to my son Marcus and his wife Brittany, I am just a retired old man wearing flannel shirts and driving a rusted Ford pickup truck. They think my days are spent counting pennies and waiting for the end. They see the grease under my fingernails and assume I am broke. What they do not see is the man who built Jefferson Logistics from a single delivery van into a multi-state empire. They do not see the $15 million sitting in offshore accounts or the land deeds that cover half the county. I retired 10 years ago, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to enjoy the quiet life with my wife Clara. But Clara passed away 3 years ago, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too cold. That was when Marcus insisted I move in with them. He said it was because family takes care of family. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the boy I raised, the boy whose college tuition I paid in cash, whose first business failures I covered without a word, actually loved me. I moved into the guest suite on the ground floor of their sprawling house in Atlanta, a house I paid for, a house they treat like a palace while treating me like the help. Yesterday was the anniversary of the day I met Clara, 50 years ago in a small jazz club on 4th Street. To honor her memory, I went to an estate sale downtown. I found it sitting in the corner, covered in dust but beautiful, a 1955 vintage turntable. It was the exact model Clara and I had in our first apartment. The wood was polished mahogany and the needle was pristine. The price tag was $500. To my children, $500 is a bottle of wine they drink in 20 minutes. To me, it was a lot for a piece of nostalgia, but I bought it. I paid cash. I carefully loaded it into my truck, feeling a warmth in my chest I had not felt in a long time. I could almost hear Coltrane playing just by looking at it. I wrestled the heavy machine into the house through the back door, trying to be quiet. I wanted to set it up in my room, pour a glass of bourbon, and close my eyes to remember the smell of Clara's perfume. I was halfway through the kitchen when Brittany walked in. Brittany is 35 years old. She is a woman who believes the world owes her a living because she exists. She was wearing her tennis whites, holding an iced matcha latte, and looking at me with the same expression one gives a stray dog that has wandered onto the porch. "Otis, what on earth is that monstrosity?" she asked, her nose wrinkling in disgust. "It is a record player, Brittany," I said, setting it down gently on the kitchen island to catch my breath. "It is vintage, like the one Clara loved." She walked over and poked it with her manicured finger. "It smells like a basement," she sneered. "It smells like old people and mold. Get it off my granite countertop, Otis. We have guests coming tonight. The investors for Marcus are coming. We cannot have this junk cluttering up the aesthetic." "It is not junk," I said, my voice low. "It is history. And I live here too, Brittany." "You live here because we are saints," she snapped. She took a step closer, and then she did something that made my blood run cold. She shoved the record player. It wasn't a gentle push, it was a shove of pure malice. The heavy wooden box slid across the polished granite. I lunged for it, but I wasn't fast enough. It tipped over the edge and crashed onto the tile floor. The sound of splintering wood and shattering internal mechanics echoed through the house like a gunshot. My heart broke along with the wood. I stared at the pieces of the needle, the cracked mahogany case. It was ruined. "Oops," Brittany said, bringing her hand to her mouth in a mock gesture of surprise that didn't hide the smirk in her eyes. "I told you it was in the way. Now clean up this mess before Marcus gets home. I don't want him stressed." I was on my knees picking up the pieces of my memory when the front door slammed. Marcus walked in. He was wearing a suit that cost $2,000 a suit I paid for. He looked at Brittany, then at me on the floor, then at the broken machine. "What is going on here?" he boomed. His voice wasn't worried. It was annoyed. "Your father is bringing trash into the house again, Marcus." Brittany whined, instantly playing the victim. He put this dirty old box on the counter where we prepare food. It fell. And look at the mess. I told him we have the investors coming. Marcus looked down at me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask about the record player. He bent down and picked up the price tag that had fallen off the machine. $500, he read. His eyes bulged. You spent $500 on this. It was for your mother, I said quietly, standing up. My knees popped. I felt every year of my age in that moment. It was our anniversary. Mom is dead, Dad, Marcus shouted. The vein in his neck was throbbing. He threw the price tag at my chest. She is dead and you are throwing money away on garbage. Do you have any idea how hard things are right now? Do you know the overhead I am carrying? I looked at him. I looked at the son who drove a Porsche. I leased for him because he said he needed to look successful to be successful. I looked at the son whose credit card bills I auto-paid every month because he claimed he was reinvesting his salary into the business. It is my money, Marcus, I said. Marcus stepped into my personal space. He was taller than me, now heavier. He used his size to intimidate, forgetting that I was the man who used to load freight trains by hand. Stop it, he hissed. Stop wasting my money. I blinked. Your money. Yes, my money. He roared, his face turning a violent shade of red. It is my inheritance, Otis. Every dollar you spend on this sentimental trash is $1 less that I get when you finally kick the bucket. You are 75 years old. You don't need to buy things. You need to sit in your room, eat your oatmeal, and save what is left for the people who actually have a future. The room went silent. Even Brittany looked a little shocked by his bluntness, but she didn't disagree. She just sipped her latte and watched. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the anger. I saw the desperation of a man who was living a lie, drowning in debt he couldn't service without my lifeline. But mostly I saw the ingratitude. I saw a man who thought my death was his payday. He thought I was a senile old man who had forgotten where the money came from. He thought I was weak. I looked down at the broken record player. I picked up a piece of the wood. I put it in my pocket. I didn't scream. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't list the millions of dollars I had quietly transferred to his accounts over the last 5 years to keep him from bankruptcy. I just looked him in the eye. Your money, I repeated softly. Yes, my money, Marcus spat. Marcus. So stop spending it. Do you understand? I nodded slowly. I understand, son. Good. Now clean this up, and wear the white shirt tonight. We need you to serve the appetizers. We fired the catering staff to save cash. He turned his back on me and walked out of the kitchen, pulling out his phone to check his stocks. Brittany stepped over the broken record player as if it were dog mess and followed him. I stood alone in the kitchen. They thought they had won. They thought they had put the old man in his place, but they didn't know that Marcus had just spoken the magic words. Stop spending my money. He wanted me to stop spending. Fine. I would stop spending. I would stop spending on the mortgage. I would stop spending on the car lease. I would stop spending on the credit cards. I would stop spending on the very air they breathed. I bent down and finished cleaning up the debris. I put the trash in the bin. Then I went to my room. I didn't cry. I didn't grieve. I walked over to the old metal safe in the back of my closet. I spun the dial. Inside sat a small black ledger and a satellite phone. I opened the ledger. It contained the master codes to the Jefferson Family Trust, the trust that controlled everything. Marcus wanted to be the man of the house. Tomorrow he was going to get his wish. He was going to find out exactly how much it costs to be a man when Daddy stops writing the checks. I sat on the edge of my bed and waited for the night to come. They wanted me to serve appetizers. I would serve them. I would serve them with a smile, because tonight was the Last Supper, and tomorrow the famine would begin. The white waiter's jacket was 2 sizes too small. It pinched under my arms, and the collar dug into my neck like a chokehold. I stood in the kitchen of the house I had bought with cash 5 years ago, adjusting the black bow tie my son Marcus had thrown at me just 10 minutes earlier. He told me that since I was living under his roof for free, the least I could do was make myself useful. He had fired the professional catering staff that morning. He said it was to cut overhead, but I knew the truth. His credit card, the one linked to my secondary account, had been declined for the deposit. He didn't know why, and he was too scared to ask me, so he decided to turn his 75-year-old father into a servant. I looked at my reflection in the oven door. I didn't see a broken old man. I saw a man in disguise. I saw a spy behind enemy lines. I picked up the silver tray loaded with champagne flutes. The champagne was cheap, $12 a bottle, but Marcus had poured it into crystal decanters to fool his guests. That was Marcus's whole life in a nutshell. Cheap wine in expensive glass. A lie polished until it shined. I walked out into the living room. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and the sound of fake laughter. There were about 20 people there. Most of them were young tech-savvy entrepreneurs in skinny suits, the kind of people who used words like synergy and disruptor, but couldn't change a flat tire if their lives depended on it. They were the investors Marcus was trying to woo for his new venture, a logistics app that he claimed would revolutionize the shipping industry. He called it Uber for freight. I had read his business plan. It was nonsense. It ignored basic regulations, fuel surcharges, and driver unions. But Marcus didn't care about the details. He only cared about the capital raise. I moved through the crowd offering drinks. No one looked me in the eye. To them, I was just part of the furniture, a pair of floating hands holding a tray. I watched my son holding court by the fireplace. He was wearing a velvet blazer and holding a cigar he hadn't lit because he didn't know how to cut it properly. He was talking loud, laughing too hard. He looked desperate. Brittany was by his side, draped in a silver dress that cost more than my first car. She was charming the wives of the potential investors, pointing out the art on the walls, art that I knew she had rented for the weekend. "Oh yes," she chirped, her voice high and tight. "We love supporting local artists. Marcus has such an eye for talent." I almost snorted, but I kept my face impassive. I approached a group of older men standing near the piano. One of them, a man with gray hair and a sharp suit, looked familiar. It was Mr. Henderson. He used to run a fleet of trucks out of Savannah back in the 90s. We had done business together once or twice, handshake deals that were worth millions. I hesitated. I didn't want to be recognized, not like this. But Henderson turned and saw me. He frowned, squinting at my face. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice rumbling like a diesel engine. "I know those eyes. Is that Otis Jefferson?" The conversation around us stopped. Marcus froze mid-laugh. Brittany's smile faltered. I straightened my back. There was no point in hiding. "Hello, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady. "It has been a long time." Henderson looked at the tray in my hand, then at my waiter's uniform. He looked confused. "Otis, what in the world are you doing? You're serving drinks. I thought you retired to an island somewhere. You were the king of the Southeast Corridor. I still tell my junior VPs about how you anticipated the fuel crisis of '98. You saved my hide with that fuel hedging contract." I saw a flicker of pride in Marcus's eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by fear. He didn't want his investors to know his father was a legend. He wanted them to think he was the self-made genius. He wanted them to think the Jefferson fortune started with him. I stepped back from the business. I said simply, "I am just helping my son tonight." Helping Henderson laughed, shaking his head. "Son, you have a gold mine here. Your father knows more about logistics in his little finger than most algorithms know in a terabyte of data." I saw the panic rise in Brittany's face. She rushed over, inserting herself between me and Henderson. She placed a hand on my arm, her nails digging into my skin through the cheap fabric of the jacket. "Oh, Mr. Henderson, you are too kind," she said, her laugh tinkling like broken glass. "But poor Otis here, he likes to tell tall tales. He was just a driver, you know, a truck driver." I looked at her. She was smiling, but her eyes were venomous. "A driver?" Henderson asked, looking skeptical. "Yes." Brittany continued, speaking louder now, making sure the whole room could hear. "He drove the trucks. He didn't run the business. And honestly, his memory isn't what it used to be. He gets confused. He thinks he was the CEO, but really he just moved boxes. He doesn't understand the modern market. He doesn't know anything about Business 4.0 or blockchain logistics. He is very old school." She patted my cheek. It was a patronizing, humiliating gesture. "Right, Pop Pop. Why don't you go get more of those crab cakes? The guests are hungry." The disrespect hit me like a physical blow. I had built a company that employed 400 people. I had negotiated contracts with federal agencies. I had built the very roof she was standing under. And she reduced me to a senile driver to save her husband's ego. I looked at Marcus. I waited for him to step in. I waited for him to say, "No, Brittany, my father was a titan." I waited for him to defend the man who had wiped his nose and paid his bail and bought his cars. Marcus looked at me, he looked at Henderson, then he looked at his shoes. "Yeah," Marcus mumbled. "Dad gets a little mixed up these days. Go get the food, Dad." My heart hardened into stone. That was it. The last thread of loyalty snapped. I nodded. As you say, I murmured. I walked back to the kitchen. I didn't get the crab cakes. I took off the white jacket. I folded it neatly and placed it on the counter next to the dirty dishes. I put on my old flannel shirt. I poured myself a glass of tap water and drank it standing up. I could hear Marcus tapping a spoon against a glass in the living room. Silence fell. He was making a speech. I walked to the doorway, staying in the shadows, and listened. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Marcus boomed, his confidence restored now that I was out of sight. "We are on the verge of something great. Jefferson Tech is going to change the world." Applause. Polite, scattered applause. But Marcus continued, his voice dropping to a somber, serious tone. "I want to be transparent with my partners. Innovation requires sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice is personal." He paused for effect. He looked toward the kitchen, thinking I was busy arranging appetizers. "My father, Otis, as you saw, is struggling," Marcus said. "His dementia is advancing rapidly. It is becoming unsafe for him to be here, and frankly, the cost of his in-home care is draining resources that should be going into the company. It is a drain on our family and on our future." I gripped the doorframe. Dementia. Drain. So Marcus said, taking Brittany's hand, "We have made a difficult decision. To streamline our expenses and ensure the stability of this investment, we will be moving my father to the Sunshine State Assisted Living Facility next week. It is a budget-friendly option, but it will keep him safe." Sunshine State. I knew that place. It was a warehouse for the indigent, a place where the hallways smelled of urine and the staff were underpaid and overworked. It was a place you sent people you wanted to forget, and Marcus added, his voice ringing with triumph. "Since he has been declared unfit, I will be assuming full legal guardianship and control over the remaining family assets. We are liquidating his old properties to inject capital directly into this project. We are going all in." The room erupted in applause. They clapped for his bravery. They clapped for his sacrifice. They clapped for the son who was throwing his father into the garbage to fund a pipe dream. Brittany was beaming. She kissed him on the cheek. They looked like the perfect power couple. I stood in the shadows. I felt a cold calmness wash over me. It was the same feeling I used to get before a big negotiation, the moment when I knew I had the winning hand and the other guy was bluffing. They thought I was senile. They thought I was broke. They thought I was powerless. Marcus thought he was taking control of the assets. He was about to find out that you cannot take control of something that has already vanished. He talked about cutting costs. I was about to give him the most aggressive cost-cutting lesson of his life. I turned away from the party. I walked down the hall to my room. I didn't pack. I didn't need clothes. I didn't need shoes. I walked to my desk and opened the top drawer. I took out a single red stamp. It was my old corporate seal, the one I used to authorize multi-million-dollar wire transfers. I took out my phone. I sent a text message to Mr. Steinberg, my attorney, a man who had been with me since 1985, a man who hated Marcus almost as much as I did right now. The text was short. Code Omega. Execute immediately. I put the phone in my pocket. I heard the laughter from the living room. They were toasting. They were drinking my champagne. They were celebrating my demise. Let them toast. Let them drink. Because when the sun rose tomorrow, the hangover was going to be lethal. I sat in my chair and waited for the guests to leave. I wasn't going to serve any more food. I wasn't going to bow. I was done being the father. Tonight, I was the CEO, and I had just fired my entire family. The house was finally quiet, but it was the silence of a graveyard, not a home. The last of the investors had stumbled out into the night drunk on cheap champagne and my son's expensive lies, leaving behind a mess of shrimp tails and cocktail napkins that stained the carpet I had paid for. I sat on the edge of my narrow twin bed in the guest room, the room that used to be a storage closet before they graciously allowed me to occupy it. My white waiter's jacket was folded on the chair, but the smell of servitude still clung to my skin. I couldn't sleep. My mind was a roaring engine of memories and regrets, playing back the humiliation of the evening on an endless loop. They had called me a driver. They had called me senile. They had laughed. My throat felt dry, like I had swallowed a handful of dust, so I opened my door and stepped into the hallway. I moved with the silent tread of a man who spent 40 years walking through warehouses at midnight, checking inventory while the rest of the world slept. I intended to go to the kitchen for a glass of water, but as I passed the master bedroom, the door was slightly ajar. A sliver of golden light cut across the dark hallway, and voices drifted out. They were hushed, but in the dead silence of the house they carried like a scream. It was Brittany. Her voice was high and tight, vibrating with excitement. "He bought it. Marcus," she whispered. "He actually bought it." Henderson swallowed the whole hook about the capital injection. "He thinks you are taking control of the Jefferson Trust next week." I froze. The Jefferson Trust. I hadn't heard that name spoken in this house for 5 years, not since I set it up to protect the bulk of my assets from exactly this kind of predatory greed. Marcus didn't know the details of the trust. He only knew it existed, and he assumed it was nearly empty, because I lived so simply. I leaned closer to the doorframe, holding my breath. "I don't know, babe," Marcus replied, and his voice trembled with a mixture of fear and bravado. "Dad is stubborn. You saw him tonight." He stood up to Henderson. "He still thinks he is the boss. If he refuses to sign the power of attorney at the nursing home, we are dead in the water. We need that signature to access the liquid assets." Brittany laughed, a cruel, low sound that made my skin crawl. "Marcus, honey, you are thinking too small," she said. "We don't need his signature. We don't need him to agree to anything." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. I heard the rustle of papers. "Look at this," Brittany said. "I met with Dr. Evans this afternoon while you were pretending to work." Dr. Evans. I knew the name. He wasn't my doctor. He was a cosmetic surgeon who ran a shady clinic downtown, a man who had lost his license twice for malpractice and bought it back with bribes. "What is this?" Marcus asked. "This," Brittany said, her voice dripping with triumph, "is a medical evaluation. It is dated 2 weeks ago. It certifies that Otis Jefferson is suffering from advanced vascular dementia. It states that he is prone to violent outbursts, confusion, and is completely incapacitated. It says he is a danger to himself and others." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Dementia. They weren't just calling me senile to embarrass me at a party. They were pathologizing me. They were creating a paper trail to erase my legal existence. "But Dad isn't violent," Marcus stammered. "He is just old." "It doesn't matter what he is," Marcus, Brittany hissed. "It matters what the paper says. Dr. Evans signed it. For $10,000 he will swear to it in court. With this document, we don't need his permission to take over the trust. We can file for emergency guardianship tomorrow morning. We can have him committed to the lockdown ward at Sunshine State by Tuesday afternoon. Once he is in the lockdown unit, he can scream all he wants about being a CEO and having millions. No one will listen. They will just up his dosage of sedatives." I stood in the hallway and felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just greed. This was evil. This was my son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had held when he scraped his knee, conspiring to lock me in a cage and drug me into oblivion just so he could steal what he hadn't earned. "But what if he fights it?" Marcus asked, weak and pathetic. "What if he calls his lawyer?" Steinberg, Brittany scoffed. "That old dinosaur! He won't know what hit him. We will file the papers ex parte. That means without notice. By the time Otis realizes what is happening, he will already be in a hospital gown, staring at the wall. And the best part is, once we have guardianship, we control the communication. We can block his calls. We can isolate him. He will just fade away, Marcus. And the money will be ours. All of it. The land, the accounts, the legacy. The legacy." She spat the word out like it was a piece of gristle. I listened to my son. I waited for him to say no. I waited for him to say, "That is my father you are talking about." I waited for a single spark of the decency I thought I had instilled in him. "Do it," Marcus whispered. "Do it tomorrow. We have to save the company." The silence that followed was the sound of the final nail being driven into the coffin of our relationship. He had made his choice. He had chosen the poison over the blood. I backed away from the door. I didn't get my water. I didn't make a sound. I walked back to my room, but I didn't sit down. The shock had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't a father anymore. I was a general, and the enemy had just revealed their battle plan. They wanted a war. They were going to get an apocalypse. I walked into the small closet of the guest room. I pushed aside the old coats and the boxes of junk they stored there. I knelt down and pried up the loose floorboard in the corner, the one I had loosened 3 months ago when I first sensed the sharks circling. Beneath the floorboard sat a fireproof lockbox. I spun the combination. Left, right, left. The click of the lock opening was the loudest sound in the room. Inside was my life. Not the life they saw, but the real one. I took out the black ledger. It was a simple leather-bound book, but inside it contained the account numbers, the routing codes, and the passwords to the shell companies in the Caymans and Zurich. It held the keys to $15 million of liquid cash and $50 million in real estate assets. Next to the ledger lay a heavy brass object, the corporate seal of Jefferson Logistics, the original, the one that was required to authorize any transfer over $1 million. Without this seal, the guardianship papers were just expensive napkins. I put the ledger and the seal into my old canvas duffel bag. I added the deed to the house we were standing in. I added the title to the Porsche Marcus drove. I added the original copy of the lease agreement for the furniture they were so proud of. I was stripping the house bare without moving a single chair. I sat down at the small desk and pulled out my burner phone. Not the smartphone Marcus monitored, but the old Nokia flip phone I kept for emergencies. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years but knew by heart. It rang twice. "Yeah," a gruff voice answered. It was 3 a.m, but Saul Steinberg never slept. He was the kind of lawyer who ate nails for breakfast and sued the manufacturer for indigestion. "Saul, it is Otis," I said. Otis Steinberg's voice shifted instantly from groggy to alert. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said. "It is Code Omega." There was a pause on the line, a heavy, pregnant pause. Steinberg knew what Code Omega meant. We had drafted it 10 years ago as a nuclear deterrent. It meant the scorched earth policy. It meant total liquidation, immediate freezing of all subsidiary assets. It meant war. "Are you sure?" Otis Steinberg asked softly. "Once we pull this trigger, there is no going back. The boy, he will be ruined. The boy is dead, Saul." I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "The man who lives in the master bedroom is a stranger who just agreed to lobotomize me for a quick buck. Execute the protocol. I want the accounts drained by 9 a.m. I want the credit line severed. I want the foreclosure notices printed and ready for service." "Understood," Steinberg said. "I will have the team on it within the hour. Where will you be?" "I am leaving," I said. "I am taking the ledger." "I am going dark." "Be careful," Otis Steinberg said. "If they find out before you are clear, they might get desperate." "They are already desperate," I said. "That is why they are dangerous. But they are about to find out that they are trapped in a cage with a lion, not a lamb." I hung up the phone. I removed the SIM card and snapped it in half. I stood up and looked around the room one last time. This had been my prison for 3 years. I had let them treat me like a child because I thought it would help them grow up. I had let them humiliate me because I thought it would teach them humility. I was wrong. You cannot teach a parasite to hunt. You can only remove the host. I threw the duffel bag over my shoulder. It was heavy, but it felt good. It felt like armor. I walked to the window and opened it. The night air was cool and smelled of rain. I climbed out, stepping into the flower bed I had planted myself. I walked across the manicured lawn toward the old pickup truck parked on the street because Brittany wouldn't let it in the driveway. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look at the window where my son slept dreaming of my money. I got into the truck. The engine roared to life with a cough and a sputter, then settled into a steady growl. I put the truck in gear and drove away into the darkness. They were planning to send me to an asylum in the morning. They were planning to erase Otis Jefferson. But Otis Jefferson was already gone, and he had taken the future with him. The sun hadn't even cracked the horizon when I opened my eyes. The digital clock on the nightstand read 4:30 in the morning. The house was silent, a heavy, expensive silence that cost $6,000 a month in mortgage payments I was covering. Upstairs, Marcus and Brittany were sleeping the deep, untroubled sleep of people who believe they have won. They were probably dreaming of yachts and penthouses of a future funded by the man they planned to lock away in a padded room. I didn't need an alarm. I had been waking up at 4:30 for 50 years. It was the time the first trucks rolled out of the distribution center. It was the time the world belonged to the people who built it, not the people who spent it. I dressed in the dark. I put on my best flannel shirt, the one with only one small tear in the elbow, and my work boots. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take a toothbrush. I took the canvas duffel bag from under the floorboard, the one heavy with the ledger and the corporate seal. I walked out of the guest room, down the hallway, past the kitchen, where the ghost of the broken record player still lingered. I walked out the back door into the cool, damp morning air. My truck was parked on the street because Brittany said it leaked oil on her driveway. It was a 1995 Ford F-150. The paint was peeling, the bumper was held on with wire, and the suspension groaned like an old man getting out of a chair. To them, it was an eyesore. To me, it was reliable. It always started. It never lied to me. I climbed in and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then settled into a low, steady rumble. I patted the dashboard. "Good girl," I whispered. "One last ride." I drove toward the city. The streets were empty. The skyscrapers of Atlanta were just beginning to catch the first light of dawn, turning from black silhouettes into towers of glass and steel. I wasn't going to the local branch. The local branch managers didn't have the clearance for what I needed to do. I was going to the regional headquarters of Sovereign Bank, the glass monolith in the financial district. While I drove, I imagined Marcus waking up. He usually woke up around 10, reaching for his phone before he even opened his eyes to check his social media or his crypto portfolio. Today, he would see a notification. A small, insignificant red dot on his banking app. Alert secondary account link severed. He would frown. He would tap the screen with his thumb, annoyed. He would think it was a glitch. He would think the server was down. He wouldn't panic. Not yet. He didn't know that the link was the umbilical cord, and I had just cut it. I pulled up to the valet stand in front of the bank headquarters. The young man in the red vest looked at my truck with disdain. He waved his hand, signaling me to move along to find a loading dock or a service entrance. I rolled down the window. "Park it up front, son," I said, handing him a $100 bill. "And keep the engine running. I won't be long." The boy looked at the bill, then at me. He took the money. Money talks, even when you are driving a wreck. I walked into the lobby. The floors were polished marble. The air smelled of money and air conditioning. A security guard stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. He saw an old black man in work boots and a flannel shirt carrying a canvas bag. He saw a threat or a vagrant. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his voice firm, blocking my path to the elevators. "Deliveries are in the back." I stopped. I looked him in the eye. "I am not a delivery man," I said. "I am here to see Mr. Sterling, the regional president." The guard smirked. "Mr. Sterling, do you have an appointment?" "Tell him Otis Jefferson is here," I said. "Tell him I brought the seal." The guard hesitated. There was something in my voice, the same steel that had made union bosses back down in the 80s. He picked up his radio. He whispered something. A moment later, his eyes went wide. He stepped back, bowing his head slightly. "Right this way, Mr. Jefferson. Mr. Sterling is expecting you on the 45th floor. Top priority." I rode the elevator up. My ears popped. The doors opened into a reception area that was bigger than my entire first house. Mr. Sterling was waiting for me. He was a man my age, well-preserved, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. We had started out together. He was the loan officer who gave me my first line of credit when no one else would touch a black man with a truck and a dream. Otis Sterling said, extending his hand. "It has been too long, but you look determined." I shook his hand. My grip was stronger. "I am done playing games, Robert," I said. "I need to make a withdrawal." We walked into his office. The view was breathtaking. You could see the whole city, the highways stretching out like veins. I put the canvas bag on his mahogany desk. I unzipped it. I took out the black ledger and the heavy brass corporate seal. Sterling looked at the seal. He knew what it meant. "The nuclear option," he said softly. "Yes," I said. "I want to execute a complete liquidation of the subsidiary accounts, specifically the accounts linked to Marcus Jefferson and Brittany Jefferson." Sterling sat down at his computer. He typed for a moment. He whistled low. "Otis, these accounts, they are heavily leveraged. The mortgage on the Buckhead house, the car leases, the credit lines, they are all backed by the primary trust assets. If I cut the link, they default," I said. "I know. That is the point." Sterling looked at me over his glasses. "Are you sure, Otis? This will destroy his credit. It will trigger immediate foreclosure clauses. He will be insolvent within 24 hours. He tried to have me committed." "Robert," I said, my voice flat. "He paid a doctor to say I was demented so he could take power of attorney. He was going to lock me away." Sterling's face hardened. He typed faster. "Say no more." I watched the screen. I watched the numbers. Marcus had been busy. The platinum card balance was $40,000. The line of credit was maxed out at $200,000. He had been bleeding me dry, confident that the well was bottomless. Empty it, I commanded. Sterling hit a key, transferring liquid assets to the offshore holding in the Caymans, he said. Closing domestic credit lines, revoking authorized user status on all cards, notifying credit bureaus of the account termination. I watched the progress bar on the screen. It moved slowly, then fast. Transfer complete. $15 million vanished from the domestic system. It was now sitting in a numbered account in a jurisdiction where Marcus couldn't touch it with a subpoena, let alone a fake medical report. Now the checking account, I said. Sterling brought up Marcus's personal checking account. It was the account I deposited his salary into every month. The balance was $12,000. He had spent most of it on the party. Drain it, I said. Sterling hesitated. Leave him zero. I thought about it. I thought about the $500 record player he had smashed. I thought about the way he looked at me when he said, "Stop wasting my money." No, I said. Not zero. Leave him $5. $5, Sterling asked. Enough for a gallon of gas, I said. Or a very cheap meal. I want him to see it. I want him to see that it wasn't a mistake. I want him to know that I left him exactly what he is worth. Sterling nodded. He typed the command. Balance remaining $5. It was done. The financial umbilical cord was severed. Marcus was now a man without a country, without a dime, without a future. I stood up. I put the seal back in my bag. Thank you, Robert, I said. Where will you go? Otis Sterling asked. I am going to disappear for a while, I said. I have a plane waiting at the private airfield. I need to see the ocean. Sterling walked me to the elevator. Otis, he said, for what it is worth, you were a good father. You gave him everything. I looked at the silver doors. That was the problem, Robert, I said. I gave him the fruit, but I never taught him how to plant the tree, and now he has to learn how to starve. I walked out of the bank. The sun was fully up now. The city was awake. People were rushing to work, chasing their paychecks. I got back into my truck. The valet held the door for me, respecting the $100 bill. I drove away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the bank app confirming the transfer, and then another notification, a text from Marcus. Dad, my card just got declined for coffee. Call the bank. Fix this. I looked at the message. Fix this. He still thought I was his mechanic. He still thought I was there to repair the damage he caused. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to fix it. I was the one who broke it. I merged onto the highway heading south. I rolled down the window and let the wind hit my face. It felt clean. It felt like freedom. Monday had arrived. The eviction had begun, and Marcus was about to find out that a $5 bill doesn't buy much in a world built on debt. The morning sun was fully blazing when I pulled the old Ford back into the driveway, but I didn't park on the street this time. I drove it right up the paver driveway that Brittany claimed cost $50,000 to install. I parked it right in the center, a rusted, oil-leaking monument to the man they thought they knew. I turned off the engine and let the silence settle. It was the last time I would hear that engine tick as it cooled. I patted the dashboard. She had been a good truck. She had hauled lumber, furniture, and dreams. Now she was just a relic like me. I walked into the house through the front door. I didn't use my key. I didn't need to lock it behind me. I wasn't worried about thieves. The real thieves already lived here, and I had just emptied their pockets. The house smelled of lemon pledge and expensive candles, a scent designed to mask the rot underneath. I walked through the foyer, past the marble console table where Brittany kept her keys, past the living room where Marcus had announced my demise the night before. I went to the guest room. My room. It was sparse, almost prison-like in its simplicity. I pulled my old canvas duffel bag out from under the bed. It was already heavy with the ledger and the seal, but I had room for a few more things. I didn't pack the clothes Marcus had bought me, the stiff slacks and the polyester shirts he thought were appropriate for an old man. I packed my own clothes, my worn denim, my comfortable sweaters, the leather jacket I had bought in 1985 when Jefferson Logistics turned its first million. I walked over to the nightstand. There sat the only thing in this house that truly mattered to me. A silver-framed photograph of Clara. She was laughing at the picture, her head thrown back, her eyes sparkling with that fierce intelligence that had captivated me for 50 years. We were young then, standing in front of our first warehouse. We had nothing but debt and determination. I picked up the frame. I wiped a speck of dust from the glass with my thumb. "We are going on a trip, baby girl," I whispered, "just like we always planned." I put the photo carefully into the bag, wrapping it in a sweater to protect the glass. I looked around the room. There was nothing else. I left the furniture. I left the toiletries. I left the illusion of Otis Jefferson, the dependent father. I walked to the kitchen. The granite island gleamed under the recessed lighting. It was the altar where they worshipped their lifestyle. I took a piece of paper from the notepad Brittany kept by the fridge, the one she used to write lists of demands for the housekeeper. I took a pen from the jar. I stared at the blank white page. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to list every sacrifice, every check, every time I had swallowed my pride to keep their fragile egos intact. But words were wasted on them. They didn't understand the language of sacrifice. They only understood the language of currency. So I kept it brief. I wrote 2 sentences. I stopped wasting your money. You are on your own. I placed the note in the center of the island. I put the keys to the house on top of it. Then I put the keys to the truck next to them. I picked up my duffel bag and walked out the back door. The backyard was expansive, 10 acres of manicured lawn, rolling hills, and carefully pruned oak trees. It was a beautiful piece of land. I had bought it 20 years ago when it was just an overgrown field. I had let Marcus build his monstrosity of a house on it because I wanted him to have roots. I didn't realize the roots would be poisonous. I walked to the center of the lawn, away from the house, away from the pool, away from the patio furniture that cost more than a teacher's salary. I stood in the open grass and looked up at the sky. It was a brilliant, cloudless blue. I checked my watch. 10 a.m. Right on time. In the distance, I heard a thumping sound, a rhythmic beat that grew louder and louder, vibrating in my chest. Thump, 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 thump. It wasn't a car. It wasn't a truck. A dark shape appeared over the tree line. It banked sharply, the sun glinting off its sleek black fuselage. It was a Bell 429 Global Ranger helicopter. It was a magnificent machine, a predator of the sky. I watched as it descended. The wind from the rotors whipped the grass into a frenzy. It tore the leaves off Brittany's prized rose bushes. It sent the patio umbrellas tumbling across the deck like tumbleweeds. I stood firm, leaning into the wind, holding my hat. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't the gardener. I wasn't the driver. The helicopter touched down in the middle of the lawn, its skids sinking slightly into the soft earth. The door slid open. A pilot in a flight suit jumped out, ducking under the rotors. He ran toward me. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. "Mr. Jefferson," he shouted over the roar of the engine, "we are ready for departure, sir. Your flight plan to the coast is filed." I nodded. I threw my bag into the back. I climbed into the leather seat. It smelled of aviation fuel and freedom. The pilot handed me a headset. I put it on. The roar of the engine dampened to a hum. "Ready, sir?" the pilot asked. "Fly," I said. The helicopter lifted off. The ground fell away. I looked down through the glass window. I saw the house shrinking. I saw the pool, a turquoise rectangle. I saw the rusted truck in the driveway, a small brown speck. It looked like a toy house, a dollhouse filled with dolls who didn't know their strings had just been cut. We banked south, turning toward the ocean. I watched the sprawling suburbs of Atlanta disappear, replaced by the green quilt of the Georgia countryside. I took a deep breath. My chest expanded. The tightness that had been there for 3 years, the constant pressure of walking on eggshells, finally released. I was gone. Hours later, the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The workday was ending. The commuters were fighting traffic on I-85, inching their way back to their mortgaged lives. Marcus and Brittany pulled into the driveway in their leased luxury cars. Marcus in the Porsche Panamera, Brittany in the Range Rover. They parked next to each other, blocking the entrance to the garage because they were too lazy to open the doors. They got out, juggling their designer bags and their takeout coffees. They were probably complaining about their day. Marcus about how hard it was to pretend to work, Brittany about how exhausting it was to spend money. They walked up to the front door. They unlocked it. They stepped into the cool, climate-controlled air. "Honey, I am home," Marcus called out, tossing his keys into the bowl. Dad, come get these bags." Silence. Brittany walked into the kitchen. She dropped her purse on the counter. "Otis," she yelled. "Otis, where are you? I need you to clean the patio." The wind made a mess of the umbrellas. She stopped. She saw the kitchen island. She saw the keys. The house keys. the truck keys, and the note. She picked it up. She read it. Her brow furrowed. She read it again, her lips moving silently. "Marcus," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. "Marcus, come here." Marcus walked in, loosening his tie. "What is it? Where is he? Is he hiding in his room?" "He is gone," Brittany whispered. "What do you mean gone?" Marcus asked, snatching the note from her hand. He read it. "I stopped wasting your money. You are on your own," he scoffed. "What is this melodramatic garbage? He probably walked to the store, or he is sulking in the garden. He can't go anywhere. He doesn't have any money." He looked out the window into the backyard. He saw the flattened grass in the middle of the lawn. He saw the rose bushes stripped bare. He saw the patio furniture overturned. "What happened out there?" he asked. "It looks like a tornado hit." Brittany ran to the guest room. Marcus followed her. They burst through the door. The room was empty. The bed was stripped. The closet was bare. The boxes of junk were pushed aside, revealing the hole in the floorboard where the safe used to be. The safe was gone. Marcus stared at the empty hole. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He didn't know what was in the safe, but the absence of it terrified him. "Check the garage," he shouted. They ran to the garage. It was empty save for the oil stains on the concrete. "Check the truck," Brittany screamed. They ran out the front door to the driveway. The old Ford was there. Marcus yanked the door open. He checked the glove box. He checked under the seats. Nothing. No registration, no insurance card, just an old candy wrapper and the smell of stale tobacco. "He is gone," Marcus said, straightening up. "He really left." "So what?" Brittany said, her panic turning into anger. "Let him go. He is a senile old man. He will be back when he gets hungry. He probably wandered off and got lost. We should call the police before he embarrasses us." Marcus looked at the house. He looked at the keys in his hand. He looked at the empty driveway where his father usually stood waiting to carry their bags. Something felt wrong. The air felt thin. He pulled out his phone. "I am going to check the accounts," he said, "just to be sure. I need to transfer the catering refund anyway." He opened his banking app. He waited for it to load. The little spinning wheel seemed to take forever. Then the screen flashed. "Login error. Account not found." He frowned. He tried again. "User ID invalid." "What is wrong with the Wi-Fi?" Brittany asked, peering over his shoulder. "It is not the Wi-Fi," Marcus muttered. "The app isn't working." He tried his credit card app, the Platinum card, the one with the $50,000 limit. Card status terminated. Account closed by primary holder. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. His knees went weak. He had to lean against the rusted truck for support. "What does it mean, terminated?" Brittany shrieked. "He closed the accounts," Marcus whispered. He closed everything." "Don't be stupid," Brittany snapped. "He can't close them. He is just an authorized user. You are the primary." "No," Marcus said, looking at her with wide, terrified eyes. "No, Brittany. I was never the primary. It was his trust. It was always his trust. I was the authorized user." He scrambled to dial the bank. He put it on speaker. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. "Welcome to Sovereign Bank. Please enter your account number." He entered the number. "We are sorry. The account number you entered is not valid." He hit 0. He hit it again and again, connecting you to a representative. A woman's voice came on the line. Cheerful, professional, Sovereign Bank. "This is Sarah. How can I help you?" "This is Marcus Jefferson," Marcus stammered. "My accounts, my apps, everything is down. I need to access my funds. One moment, Mr. Jefferson. Let me look you up by your social." He gave her the number. He waited. The silence stretched for an eternity. "Mr. Jefferson," Sarah said, her voice changing. It was cooler now, guarded. "I see here that your access privileges were revoked at 9 a.m. this morning by the account trustee." "Revoked?" Marcus screamed. "Who revoked them?" "Mr. Otis Jefferson," the woman said. "He executed a full liquidation and closure of all subsidiary accounts." "Liquidation," Marcus gasped. But where is the money?" The savings, the investment portfolio, the funds have been transferred. Mr. Jefferson, transferred where I cannot disclose that information, sir. You are no longer authorized on this profile. But I have money in there, Marcus yelled. My salary, my checking account. I see one remaining active account in your name, sir, the woman said. A personal checking account ending in 44. Yes? Marcus cried. Yes. How much is in it? $5, sir. Marcus dropped the phone. It hit the driveway with a crack. $5. He looked at Brittany. She was pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He took it all, she whispered. He took it all. Marcus looked at the mansion looming over them. The mortgage was due in 3 days, $6,000. The car lease was due on Friday, $2,000. The electricity, the water, the country club dues. He looked at the Porsche. He looked at the Range Rover. They weren't cars anymore. They were anchors, and the chain had just been cut. He looked down the long, empty road leading away from the house, the road his father had taken. He didn't just leave, Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. He evicted us. And as the sun finally set, casting the house into shadow, the only sound was the wind whistling through the empty space where their future used to be. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of aggressive sunshine that Brittany usually loved, because it made her diamond earrings sparkle a little brighter. She woke up in the master bedroom of the house she thought she owned, and for a few minutes she managed to convince herself that the previous night had been a bad dream. She convinced herself that the empty safe and the missing truck and the terrifying silence from the bank apps were just a temporary glitch, a misunderstanding. Otis was just an old man having a tantrum, she told herself as she applied her $60 moisturizer. He would come crawling back when he got hungry or lonely. In the meantime, she needed to maintain appearances. She needed to show the world, and specifically her circle of frenemies, that the Jefferson Empire was as solid as the rock on her finger. She called her girls, Tiffany and Courtney. They were the kind of friends who would compliment your dress while texting someone else about how much weight you had gained. Brittany knew this, but she needed an audience. She needed to perform. Let us go to Phipps Plaza, she told them. I need some retail therapy. The stress of dealing with Marcus's father is just too much. I need to treat myself. They met at the entrance of the Hermes boutique. Brittany stepped out of her Range Rover, which was running on fumes because she hadn't filled it up yet. She tossed her hair back and put on her oversized sunglasses. She looked the part. She looked like money. Tiffany and Courtney were already waiting, their eyes scanning her for any sign of weakness. Brittany gave them none. She smiled that tight, practiced smile she used for charity galas and walked straight through the glass doors. The air inside the boutique was cool and smelled of expensive leather and exclusivity. A sales associate named Pierre, who knew Brittany by name and by the limit on her credit card, rushed over. Mrs. Jefferson, he cooed. So good to see you. We just got the new collection in. I put something aside I knew you would love. He led her to a glass case in the center of the room. Inside sat a Birkin bag. It was ostrich leather dyed a rare shade of blue. It was beautiful. It was ridiculous. It was $20,000. Brittany gasped. She didn't even look at the price tag. She didn't have to. She was a Jefferson. Or so she thought. I will take it, she said loud enough for Tiffany and Courtney to hear. In fact, I will take the matching scarf too. Wrap it up, Pierre. I am in a rush. Tiffany raised an eyebrow. A Birkin, she asked, her voice dripping with fake admiration. Is it a special occasion? Just a Tuesday. Brittany laughed. Marcus told me to spoil myself. He feels terrible about the drama with his dad. You know how old people get. So demanding. She walked to the counter. She pulled out her wallet. It was a sleek designer piece that cost more than my weekly grocery bill used to be. She opened it and pulled out the black card. The Centurion. It was heavy, made of anodized titanium. It was the ultimate status symbol. It was also a supplementary card linked directly to the Jefferson Trust master account. My account. She handed it to Pierre with a bored flick of her wrist. Pierre took the card. He swiped it through the machine. He waited. Brittany drummed her manicured fingernails on the glass counter, checking her reflection in the mirror behind the register. She was already imagining the Instagram post. #blessed, #retail therapy. The machine beeped, a harsh, dissonant sound that cut through the hushed atmosphere of the store. Pierre frowned. He looked at the screen. He swiped the card again. Beep. Is there a problem? Brittany asked, her smile faltering just a fraction. One moment, Mrs. Jefferson, Pierre said, his voice dropping an octave. It seems to be not reading. Let me try the chip. He inserted the card. He waited. The machine thought about it. The machine communicated with the central server at Sovereign Bank. The server checked the status of the account. The server saw the flag I had placed there at 9 a.m. that morning. Code Omega. Unauthorized user. Lost/stolen protocol. The machine let out a long, low tone of rejection. Pierre looked up. His face was pale. The professional smile was gone, replaced by a look of nervous discomfort. "I am sorry, Mrs. Jefferson," he said quietly. "The card has been declined." "Declined?" Brittany laughed, a high, shrill sound that made heads turn. "That is impossible. It is a centurion." "It has no limit." "Run it again, Pierre." "You probably did it wrong." "I have run it 3 times, ma'am," Pierre said. "The code is specific. Do not honor." Brittany felt the heat rising in her neck. She could feel Tiffany and Courtney watching her. Their eyes were wide, their mouths slightly open. They were smelling blood in the water. "Here," she said, snatching the black card back and throwing down a platinum visa. "Use this one. The bank is probably just doing a security check because of the amount. It happens all the time when you have this much money." Pierre took the visa. He swiped it. Beep. Declined. Brittany's hands started to shake. She pulled out another card. An Amex Gold. Declined. A MasterCard. Declined. She dug into her wallet, her movements frantic now. She pulled out her debit card, the one linked to the joint checking account she shared with Marcus. "The account I had drained, leaving exactly $5. Just use the debit," she snapped. "I will transfer funds later. Just get it done." Pierre swiped the debit card. Insufficient funds. The silence in the boutique was absolute. The other customers had stopped browsing. The security guard near the door had taken a step closer. Tiffany and Courtney were no longer hiding their smirks. They were exchanging glances of pure delight. This was better than shopping. This was a social execution. Pierre cleared his throat. "Mrs. Jefferson," he said, and his voice was no longer friendly. It was cold. It was the voice of a man who realized he was wasting his time on a fraud. "The system has flagged these cards. Specifically, the black card." "Flagged?" Brittany whispered. "Flagged for what?" Pierre looked at the screen. He hesitated. Then he looked at the security guard. "The issuer has reported this card as stolen and unauthorized," he said. "The instruction is to confiscate and destroy." "Stolen!" Brittany shrieked. She lunged for the card, but Pierre was faster. He pulled it out of her reach. "That is my card," she screamed. "My name is on it. Give it back to me." "I cannot do that, ma'am," Pierre said. He reached under the counter and pulled out a large pair of silver scissors. "No," Brittany gasped. Pierre cut the titanium card. It took some effort. He had to use 2 hands. Snap! The heavy metal broke in 2. He dropped the pieces into a bin under the counter. "That is illegal," Brittany yelled. "Do you know who I am? I am Brittany Jefferson. My husband is Marcus Jefferson. We spend thousands of dollars in here. I will have your job. I will have this whole store shut down." Tiffany stepped forward, not to help, but to twist the knife. "Brittany." "Honey, maybe you should call Marcus." "Tiffany," said her voice dripping with faux concern, "maybe he forgot to pay the bill. You know how forgetful men can be." "I will call him." Brittany snapped. "I will call him right now, and he will fix this, and then you will all be sorry." She pulled out her phone. She dialed Marcus. She put it on speaker because she wanted everyone to hear him apologize. She wanted everyone to hear him say it was a bank error. It rang once, twice. Then Marcus picked up. "Where are you?" Brittany screamed into the phone. "I am at Hermes. They just cut my card, Marcus. They cut the black card. They said it was stolen. Fix it. Fix it right now." There was a pause, a long, heavy pause filled with the sound of wind and traffic. "I can't fix it." Marcus's voice came through the speaker, tinny and broken. "What do you mean you can't fix it?" Brittany yelled. "You are the primary. Call the bank. Yell at them." "I am not the primary," Marcus shouted back, and his voice was filled with a panic that matched hers. "I never was. It was Dad. It was always Dad. And Brittany. I am stuck." "Stuck?" Brittany asked, confusion warring with her rage. "Stuck where?" "At the office. I am at the Shell station on Piedmont," Marcus cried. "I tried to put gas in the Porsche. The tank was empty. I used the debit card." And Brittany asked, dread pooling in her stomach. It cut off at $5, Marcus sobbed. $5, Brittany. That is all that was in there. I have half a gallon of gas. I can't even get home. I can't get to you. The cards are dead, all of them. He shut us down, Brittany. He shut us down. The phone slipped from Brittany's hand. It hit the polished floor with a clatter. $5. She looked at Pierre. He was holding the bag, the beautiful blue ostrich bag, and putting it back in the case. He locked the glass door. The click of the lock was final. She looked at Tiffany and Courtney. They weren't smirking anymore. They were looking at her with something worse than mockery. They were looking at her with disgust. She was contagious. She was poor. Mrs. Jefferson, the security guard, said, stepping forward and taking her elbow. I think it is time for you to leave. Get your hands off me, Brittany whispered, but there was no fight left in her. She walked out of the store. The sun was still shining, but it didn't make her diamonds sparkle anymore. It just exposed her. She stood on the sidewalk next to her gas-guzzling SUV, knowing she didn't have enough fuel to get home, knowing her husband was stranded on the side of the road with $5 worth of gas, knowing that the credit card in her wallet was just a piece of plastic. She looked down at her phone. A notification popped up. A text from Marcus. He took the helicopter. He is gone. Brittany sank down onto the curb in her designer dress. She put her head in her hands. The shoppers walked past her, ignoring the woman crying on the concrete. Welcome to the real world. Brittany, I thought from my seat in the helicopter, thousands of feet above. It is a long walk home when you burn your bridges. The house was dark when Marcus finally walked through the front door. He had walked 6 miles in his Italian loafers because he didn't have enough gas to drive the Porsche home, and he didn't have enough money in his account to call a taxi. His feet were blistered and his suit was stained with sweat, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the terror clawing at his insides. Brittany was already there, sitting on the floor of the foyer, surrounded by her shopping bags from the mall that contained nothing because she hadn't been able to buy anything. She was holding her phone, staring at the screen with the manic intensity of a gambling addict waiting for the slot machine to spin. He is not answering, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I have called him 40 times, Marcus. It goes straight to voicemail. Marcus dropped his keys on the table. The sound echoed in the empty hallway. He pulled out his own phone. The battery was at 4%. He dialed my number. The subscriber you are calling is not available. Please leave a message. Marcus screamed. It was a primal sound of frustration and fear. He hurled the phone at the sofa. It bounced harmlessly onto the cushions. He can't just disappear. Marcus paced the room, limping slightly. He is 75 years old. He has lived in this county his whole life. He doesn't know how to travel. He doesn't have a passport. He has money, Brittany said, looking up. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black streaks. He has $15 million, Marcus. He can buy a passport. He can buy a new identity. He can buy a private island. No. Marcus shook his head violently. No. He is confused. You said it yourself, Brittany. He has dementia. The doctor said he was declining. This is a fugue state. He probably wandered off and forgot who he was. He thinks he is a tycoon again. He thinks he is running the company. He stopped pacing. A look of desperate hope crossed his face. That is it, he said. He is sick. He is a danger to himself. If we report him missing, if we tell the police he is mentally unstable, they will track him down. They will ping his phone. They will find him and bring him back to us. And then we commit him. Brittany finished for him, standing up. We get the emergency guardianship. We get control of the accounts back. We tell the bank it was the action of a senile old man. They will reverse the transfer. It was a plan born of desperation and greed. They truly believed their own lies. They had told the lie about my dementia so many times that it had become their reality. They couldn't conceive of a world where Otis Jefferson was smarter, faster, and more ruthless than they were. They spent the rest of the night calling. 100 calls, 200, they left voicemails that ranged from pleading to threatening. Dad, pick up. We are worried sick. Otis, if you don't answer, we are calling the cops. Dad, please, we love you. I listened to them all from the satellite phone on the helicopter, but I didn't answer. I just let them dig. The next morning they drove to the precinct. They took the Range Rover because it had just enough gas to get them downtown. They walked into the station wearing their wrinkled clothes from the day before, trying to look like the concerned children of a missing patriarch. They approached the front desk. We need to report a missing person, Marcus said, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. It is my father, Otis Jefferson. He has been gone for 24 hours. The sergeant at the desk looked up. He knew the name. Everyone in town knew the name Jefferson. Otis Jefferson, he asked. The trucking guy. Yes, Marcus said. But he is not the man he used to be. He is suffering from advanced dementia. He is confused. He took a vehicle he shouldn't be driving. We are terrified he might hurt himself or someone else. Brittany chimed in, squeezing a fake tear from her eye. He left a note, officer. A suicide note, or a goodbye note. It made no sense. He was ranting about money and helicopters. He is hallucinating. Please, you have to find him. The sergeant frowned. He typed something into his computer. I will get the chief, he said. 5 minutes later, the door to the inner office opened. Chief Miller walked out. Chief Miller and I went back 40 years. We had fished the same rivers. We had buried our wives in the same cemetery. He knew me better than my own son did. He was a big man with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen every lie a criminal could tell. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Brittany. He didn't offer them a seat. You are reporting Otis missing. The chief asked, his voice flat. Yes, Chief Marcus said, stepping forward, trying to use his height to look important. He ran away yesterday morning. He drained the accounts. He is not in his right mind. We have medical concerns. We need you to put out an APB. We need you to trace his phone. Medical concerns, the chief repeated. Yes, Brittany said. He is senile. He thinks people are stealing from him. It is paranoia. Chief Miller crossed his arms over his chest. He looked at them with a mixture of amusement and disgust. That is funny, he said. Because Otis didn't sound senile when I had breakfast with him yesterday morning. Marcus froze. You saw him, I did, the chief said. He came in here right before he went to the bank. He wanted to file some paperwork. What paperwork? Marcus whispered. A statement of sound mind, the chief said, witnessed by me and a notary public. And he left something for you, in case you came looking. The chief walked back to his desk. He picked up a tablet. He walked back to the counter and pressed play. He turned the screen toward them. The video flared to life. It was me. I was sitting in the cockpit of the helicopter, the headset around my neck, the ocean visible through the window behind me. I looked straight into the camera. I looked healthy. I looked strong. I looked happy. Hello, Marcus. Hello, Brittany. My voice on the recording was clear and steady. If you are watching this, it means you went to the police. It means you tried to tell my old friend Miller here that I am crazy. It means you tried to use the law to drag me back into your cage. On the screen, I leaned closer. I am not missing. I am not lost. And I am certainly not crazy. I am on vacation, a permanent vacation. I have taken my money, my life, and my dignity, and I have gone where you cannot find me. I held up a copy of that morning's newspaper to prove the date. Today is Tuesday. I am of sound mind and body. I am leaving of my own free will. I am cutting off all financial support to my adult son, Marcus Jefferson, and his wife, Brittany, effective immediately. Any attempt to report me missing is a false police report. Any attempt to claim guardianship is fraud. I smiled on the video. It was the smile of a man who had just dropped a heavy load. Stop looking for me, Marcus. Start looking for a job. The free ride is over. The video ended. The screen went black. Chief Miller took the tablet back. He looked at Marcus, who was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering, so the chief set his voice hard as iron. Here's the situation. Otis is not missing. He is not endangered. He is a grown man with his own money who decided he didn't want to live with you anymore. But he can't do that, Marcus stammered, tears of frustration welling in his eyes. He has obligations. He has debts. He has no obligations to you, the chief snapped, and from what he showed me, the only debts are yours. Brittany lunged forward, grabbing the counter. You have to find him, she shrieked, her veneer of sophistication cracking completely. He stole our money. He emptied the accounts. That is theft. That is grand larceny. Arrest him. The chief laughed. It was a dry, humorless bark. Lady, he emptied his accounts. I saw the ledger. I saw the trust documents. Otis Jefferson is the sole trustee. He can burn that money in a bonfire if he wants to. It is not stealing to take what is yours. But we have bills, Brittany wailed. We have a mortgage. Then I suggest you sell the house, the chief said, turning his back on them. Now get out of my station, before I arrest you for filing a false report. You came in here lying about a man's mental health to try and use the police as your personal debt collectors. That is a crime. He looked over his shoulder. And Marcus. Marcus looked up, broken and defeated. Your dad told me to give you a message if you showed up. What? Marcus whispered. He said he hopes the $5 lasts you until payday. The chief slammed his office door shut. Marcus and Brittany stood in the lobby of the police station surrounded by officers who were pretending to work but were actually listening to every word. They were stripped bare. The lie about my dementia was dead. The hope of a police rescue was dead. They walked out of the station into the blinding sunlight. The heat rising from the pavement was suffocating. They walked to the Range Rover. Marcus got in the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine sputtered. It coughed. Then it died. The fuel light blinked red on the dashboard. Empty. Marcus hit the steering wheel. He hit it again and again, screaming until his throat was raw. "We are stuck," Brittany whispered, staring out the window at the busy street where people were going about their lives. People who had jobs, people who had gas in their cars. "We are stuck here, Marcus." Marcus looked at her. "We have to call Chloe," he said. "She has savings. She has that college fund Dad set up for her years ago. We can make her give it to us." Brittany nodded, her eyes lighting up with a new desperate hope. "Yes. Chloe. She will help us. She has to." They didn't know that I had gotten to Chloe first. They didn't know that while they were sleeping, I had sent a package to her dorm room. A package that contained the truth about her parents and a key to a future they couldn't touch. Marcus got out of the dead car. "Come on," he said. "We are walking." "Where?" Brittany asked. "To find a payphone," Marcus said. "Because my phone just died." They started walking down the hot, dusty sidewalk, two millionaires without a penny to their names, leaving the dead luxury SUV behind, like a tombstone marking the spot where their delusions finally ran out of gas. My granddaughter Chloe was the only flower that had managed to bloom in the toxic soil of my son's house. She was 19 years old, studying architecture at Georgia Tech, possessed of a sharp mind and a heart that hadn't yet been calcified by Brittany's materialism. While Marcus and Brittany were busy reporting me missing to the police, a private courier was already walking onto the university campus, carrying a thick manila envelope with a return address that didn't exist. I sat in my helicopter watching the coastline drift by, imagining the moment she received it. I pictured her in her dorm room surrounded by drafting tables and scale models, opening the package with those long artistic fingers that reminded me so much of Clara. Inside the envelope was a letter, handwritten. I didn't trust emails. Emails could be deleted. Ink on paper was permanent. "My dearest Chloe, by the time you read this, you have probably heard that your grandfather has lost his mind. Your father will tell you I am senile. Your mother will tell you I am selfish. They will say I abandoned the family. Do not believe them. I have not abandoned you. I have simply stopped funding the circus. I have paid your tuition for the next 3 years in full. I have deposited a living allowance into a new account in your name at a bank your father doesn't know exists. The debit card is taped to this letter. The PIN is your grandmother's birthday. You are free, Chloe. You don't need their money because they don't have any left, and you don't need their permission, but I need a favor. I need you to be my eyes. Watch them. Don't help them. Just watch. And when they come to you for money, and they will come, remember this. You cannot save people who are determined to drown. You can only make sure you are not tied to them when they go under. Love, Pop Pop." Also in the envelope was a key, a heavy iron key to a safety deposit box in Savannah. Inside that box was her real inheritance. Not the money Marcus thought he was entitled to, but the legacy Clara had wanted for her. Vintage jewelry, savings bonds, the things that mattered. Chloe read the letter. I know she did. She read it, and she cried not out of fear, but out of relief. She had been suffocating in that house for years, watching her parents spend money they didn't earn, watching them treat me like a servant. She knew. Children always know. Later that afternoon, just as the heat of the day was reaching its peak, Chloe drove her modest Honda Civic, the car I had bought her, not the flashy convertible Brittany wanted her to have, up the long driveway of the Jefferson estate. She had come to collect her things. She knew the ship was sinking and she wasn't going to go down with the rats. She walked into the house. It was sweltering. The air conditioning was off. Marcus had probably turned it off to save electricity, not realizing that the bill was already 3 months overdue and the grace period I had secretly extended was about to expire. Marcus and Brittany were in the kitchen. They looked like refugees in their own home. Marcus had stripped off his tie and his expensive shirt was stained with sweat. Brittany was fanning herself with a fashion magazine, her hair frizzy in the humidity. They were eating peanut butter out of the jar with spoons because there was nothing else in the pantry. Chloe walked in looking cool and composed in her jeans and t-shirt. She carried a backpack. Chloe Brittany shrieked, jumping up. Her eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. "Thank God you are here. Did you bring food? Did you bring cash, Mom?" "Dad," Chloe said, her voice calm. "I just came to get my drafting supplies and my winter clothes. I am staying on campus for the rest of the semester. Staying on campus." Marcus asked, wiping peanut butter from his mouth. "You can't stay on campus. We need you here." "We are in a crisis, Chloe. Your grandfather, he has gone crazy. He stole everything. He didn't steal anything, Dad," Chloe said, walking past them toward the stairs. "It was his money." Marcus froze. He exchanged a look with Brittany. A look of desperate realization. "You knew," Brittany hissed. "You talked to him." Chloe stopped on the stairs. She looked down at them. "He sent me a letter," she said. "He told me he is safe. He told me he is happy." "Happy?" Marcus roared, his face flushing red. "Happy. He left us destitute. He cut off the cards. He drained the accounts." "We have $5, Chloe?" $5. "And whose fault is that?" Chloe asked. "Did you ever ask him about the business? Did you ever thank him for the house? Or did you just ask for the credit card limit to be raised?" "Don't you dare judge us," Brittany snapped, marching to the bottom of the stairs. "You are just a child. You don't understand the pressure we are under. We have bills. We have appearances to maintain." "Appearances?" Chloe scoffed. "Is that all you care about?" "Listen to me," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a wheedling, manipulative tone. "We are a family. We stick together. Right now, we have a liquidity problem, a temporary cash flow issue. We need to pay the electric bill. It is overdue. They sent a notice. They're going to cut it off today, so pay it," Chloe said. "Get a job." "We can't get a job today," Marcus yelled. "We need cash now." "You have savings, Chloe. You have that money from your summer job at the architectural firm. You have the account Pop set up for you when you turned 18. Chloe gripped the railing. She felt the weight of the debit card in her pocket, the one I had sent her. It had $10,000 on it, enough to pay the electric bill for a year, enough to feed them for months. But she remembered my words. "You cannot save people who are determined to drown." "I don't have any money for you," Chloe said. "Liar," Brittany screamed. "We know you have it. Give it to us. We are your parents. We gave you life. You gave me life," Chloe said, her voice trembling slightly but her eyes hard. "But Pop gave me a future, and I am not going to waste it paying for your mistakes." She turned and ran up the stairs. "Chloe," Marcus shouted, starting to follow her. "Chloe, come back here." He made it to the third step when the house suddenly went dark. The hum of the refrigerator died. The display on the microwave went black. The recessed lights in the hallway flickered and died. The silence was sudden and absolute. "What happened?" Brittany whispered in the gloom. "They cut it," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "They cut the power." Upstairs, Chloe was packing her bag by the light of the window. She moved fast. She didn't take the designer clothes Brittany had bought her to show off to her friends. She took her sketchbooks. She took the photo of me and Clara she kept on her desk. She took her laptop. She walked back down the stairs. The house was already heating up, the Georgia sun beating down on the roof, turning the mansion into an oven. Marcus and Brittany were standing in the foyer, illuminated only by the harsh daylight streaming through the glass door. They looked like ghosts. They looked small. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking. "You can't leave us here. It is going to be 90 degrees today. We have no food. We have no AC." "I am going to school," Chloe said. "I have a class." "Chloe, please," Brittany begged, grabbing her daughter's arm. "Just a few $100. Just enough to get the lights back on. We will pay you back, I promise. When we get the trust. When we fix this." "You are never going to fix this," Chloe said, pulling her arm away. "Because you didn't break it. You just used it until it ran out." She opened the front door. The heat from outside rushed in, but it felt cleaner than the air inside. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad." She walked out. She got into her Honda. She started the engine. Marcus and Brittany stood in the doorway of their multi-million-dollar tomb, watching their daughter drive away. They were alone. The power was out. The money was gone. The bridge to the next generation had been burned. Marcus sank down onto the marble floor. He put his head in his hands. "It is getting hot," he whispered. Brittany looked at him. She looked at the dark chandelier hanging above them, a useless crystal ornament. "We have to sell the furniture," she said, her eyes wild. "The rugs, the art, we have to sell it all." She didn't know yet that she couldn't sell any of it. She didn't know that the furniture rental trucks were already scheduled for the morning. Chloe drove down the driveway, tears streaming down her face. She touched the letter in her purse. She felt the shape of the key. "Watch them," I had written. She looked in the rearview mirror. The house stood on the hill, magnificent and dark, a monument to greed. She wasn't watching them anymore. She was leaving them behind. And for the first time in her life, she understood exactly what I had done. I hadn't abandoned them. I had set her free. It had been 7 days since I ascended into the sky, leaving my son and his wife in the purgatory I had designed for them. 7 days of heat. 7 days of silence. 7 days of a slow and agonizing realization that the life they thought they built was actually a stage set, and the stage manager had just turned off the lights. From my terrace in the Caribbean, I monitored the situation. I didn't need cameras inside the house anymore. I knew exactly what was happening because I had written the schedule. Monday was the day the illusion of ownership would finally shatter. Inside the mansion, the air was stagnant and heavy. The Georgia sun had turned the brick structure into a kiln. Without the air conditioning running, the temperature inside hovered near 90 degrees. Marcus and Brittany were living like squatters in a palace. They had eaten through the pantry. They had fought over the last bottle of water. They were sweating in their designer clothes because they had no way to wash them. They were waiting for a miracle, but instead they got a convoy. It started at 8 in the morning. A low rumble shook the window panes. It wasn't the polite purr of a luxury sedan. It was the guttural roar of heavy diesel engines. Marcus scrambled off the living room floor where he had been sleeping on the rug because the upstairs bedrooms were too hot. He ran to the window, his shirt stained and wrinkled, his face covered in a week of patchy stubble. He pulled back the curtain. "Brittany," he croaked, his voice dry and cracked. "Look, trucks." Brittany lifted her head from the sofa. Her hair was a matted mess. Her eyes were sunken. She dragged herself to the window. "Is it the bank?" she asked, terrified. "Is it the police?" "No." Marcus said, a flicker of desperate hope lighting up his eyes. "It is not the police. Look at the logos. Premium Home Leasing. Lux Auto Fleet Services." He turned to her, a manic grin stretching across his face. "It is Dad," he said. "He sent them. He must have rented furniture. Or maybe he is sending help. Maybe he came to his senses and realized he can't leave us like this." They ran to the front door. For the first time in a week, they opened it with hope. The fresh air, even though it was humid, felt like a blessing compared to the stale atmosphere of the house. 3 large box trucks were idling in the driveway. Behind them were 2 flatbed tow trucks. A team of men in blue uniforms jumped out. They carried clipboards and moving dollies. They didn't look like saviors. They looked like repossessors. A large man with a thick neck and a clipboard walked up the steps. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the disheveled state of the once proud heir. He didn't blink. "Marcus Jefferson," the man asked. "Yes," Marcus said, straightening his spine, trying to summon the arrogance of the man he used to be. "I am Marcus Jefferson. Did my father send you?" In a manner of speaking, the man said, "I am Mike with Premium Leasing. We are here for the collection." "Collection?" Marcus asked, confused. "What collection?" "The assets," Mike said, tapping his clipboard with a pen. "We have a work order here to recover all leased property due to contract termination by the primary leaseholder." Marcus froze. "Leased property? What are you talking about?" Brittany snapped, stepping forward. "We don't lease anything. We own this furniture. We imported the sofa from Italy. The television is ours." Mike flipped a page on his clipboard. He held it up for them to see. Item 1, Mike read, Chesterfield leather sectional in cognac. Item 2, Sony 85-inch Master Series display. Item 3, marble dining set 12 seats. Item 4, Persian silk rugs. He looked up. It says here, all items were leased by Mr. Otis Jefferson on a 5-year renewable contract. The contract was canceled last Tuesday. We are here to pick it up. "No," Marcus whispered. "No, that is impossible. Dad gave us that furniture as a housewarming gift. He said he bought it. He said he took care of it," Mike corrected. "And he did." He paid the monthly premiums, but he never transferred title. It is rental property, folks. And the rent stopped. He waved his hand to his crew. All right, boys, let us clear it out. Everything on the list. The men surged forward. They marched past Marcus and Brittany like an invading army. They wore boot covers, but they didn't need them because the house was already dirty. You can't go in there, Brittany shrieked, blocking the doorway with her body. This is trespassing. This is my house. Get out, Mike sighed. He pulled another paper from his clipboard. Ma'am, this is a repossession order. You can step aside or I can call the sheriff to remove you for obstructing a recovery. Your choice. Marcus grabbed Brittany's arm and pulled her back. He knew they couldn't risk the police coming back. Not after the false report. Let them take it, he whispered, his voice hollow. Just let them take it. They stood in the foyer and watched the dismantling of their lives. It was brutal in its efficiency. Two men grabbed the sofa, the beautiful Italian leather sofa where Brittany had held court with her friends. They turned it sideways and marched it out the door. Another team unhooked the massive television from the wall, leaving behind a rectangle of clean paint surrounded by dust and gaping holes where the brackets had been. My dining table. Brittany sobbed as she watched four men hoist the marble slab. My rugs, my lamps, they took it all. They took the artwork off the walls. They took the high-end blender from the kitchen. They took the patio furniture that had been overturned by the helicopter. They swept through the house like locusts, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of their boots. But the worst was yet to come. While the house was being gutted, Mike walked back out to the driveway. He signaled the tow trucks. The drivers backed up toward the Porsche and the Range Rover. The heavy chains rattled as they were dragged across the pavement. It was the sound of a dungeon door closing. "Wait!" Marcus yelled, running down the steps barefoot. "Wait, not the cars. You can't take the cars. Those are in my name. I signed the papers at the dealership." Mike shook his head. "You signed as the driver's son. You are the registered operator. But the financing, the lease agreement, that is all Otis Jefferson. It is a corporate fleet lease. Jefferson Logistics." He pointed to the VIN number on the windshield. "Corporate asset," he said, "and the corporation has recalled the fleet." The driver of the tow truck knelt down and hooked the chains onto the axle of the Porsche. He didn't have the keys because I had taken them, so he had to drag it. The tires screeched against the pavers, leaving black skid marks that looked like scars. It was a painful sound, a scream of mechanical protest. My Porsche Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face. My beautiful car. They winched it up onto the flatbed. It sat there at a steep angle, looking helpless and repossessed. Then they went for the Range Rover. Brittany watched as her status symbol, her tank, her shield against the world was hooked up and dragged away. Inside the cars were their sunglasses, their phone chargers, the little remnants of their daily lives. "Can I at least get my things out?" Brittany pleaded, walking toward the truck. "My gym bag is in there." "Sorry, ma'am," Mike said, climbing into his cab. "The order is for immediate recovery, no access permitted. You can call the depot in 3 days to claim personal effects." 3 days. In 3 days, they wouldn't have a way to get to the depot. The neighbors had noticed. Of course they had noticed. In a neighborhood like that, silence was the norm, and a fleet of repo trucks was a spectacle. The curtains in the houses across the street twitched. Gable, who lived 2 doors down and had always hated Brittany for parking in front of her mailbox, was standing on her lawn holding her phone up, recording everything. Brittany saw her. She saw the red light of the recording. She realized that by lunchtime this video would be in every group chat in the zip code. The humiliation was total. It wasn't just private poverty anymore. It was public ruin. The last truck door slammed shut. The engines roared. "Have a nice day," Mike called out from the window. The convoy rolled down the driveway, leaving Marcus and Brittany standing in the empty space where their cars used to be. The oil stains on the driveway were the only proof that they had ever owned luxury vehicles. They turned and walked back into the house. It echoed. It was just a shell now. The grand living room was a vast expanse of hardwood floor. The dining room was a cavern. The kitchen was bare. There was nowhere to sit. There was nowhere to lay their heads. Marcus walked to the center of the living room. He looked at the wall where the TV had been. He looked at the floor where the rug had been. "He rented it," he whispered. "He rented everything. He never bought us anything, Brittany. We were just living in a showroom." Brittany slid down the wall until she hit the floor. She wrapped her arms around her knees. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice small and terrified. We have no car. We have no furniture. We have no money. Marcus looked at her. He looked at the empty house that was slowly cooking them alive. We wait, he said. Wait for what? For the next shoe to drop, Marcus said. Because I don't think he is finished. He was right. I wasn't finished. I was just clearing the stage for the final act. The furniture was gone, the cars were gone. Now it was time to take the roof. I sat on my balcony miles away and sipped my iced tea. I checked my email. The confirmation from the leasing company had arrived. Assets recovered. I smiled. It wasn't about the money. The resale value of used furniture was negligible. It was about the lesson. It was about showing them that ownership is earned, not gifted. You cannot build a life on borrowed things. Marcus and Brittany sat on the hard wooden floor of their empty mansion, listening to the silence, listening to the heat expand the beams of the house, waiting for the darkness to come. They were alone with their thoughts, and for the first time in their lives, their thoughts were the only things they truly owned. And those thoughts were terrifying. The silence in the empty mansion was different now. It was no longer the stunned silence of shock, but the desperate, calculating silence of a trapped animal looking for a way to chew off its own leg. It was Tuesday morning. The furniture was gone. The cars were gone. The air conditioning was still dead, and the Georgia heat was already baking the brick walls, turning the grand foyer into a convection oven. Marcus and Brittany had spent the night on the hardwood floor using their expensive jackets as pillows. They woke up stiff, hungry, and smelling of sweat and fear. I watched them from my terrace miles away, sipping my coffee. I knew what Marcus was thinking before he even said it. I knew the architecture of his greed because I had inadvertently drawn the blueprints myself. He was looking at the walls. He was looking at the high ceilings. He was looking at the marble floors. He didn't see a home. He saw equity. He saw the last poker chip he had left to play. We sell the house. Marcus croaked, his voice raspy from dehydration. Brittany sat up, brushing her matted hair out of her eyes. She looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Sell the house, she whispered. Marcus, we have nowhere else to go. We sell it, Marcus said, standing up and pacing the empty room. It is worth $4 million, maybe $5 million in this market. We sell it quick. We take a cash offer. Even if we get $3 million, that is enough. That is enough to start over. We get an apartment, we get new cars, we sue Dad later for the rest, but right now we need liquidity. But it is Otis's house, Brittany said, a flicker of reality trying to penetrate her delusion. It is family property, Marcus snapped. I am his only son. I am the heir. He is incompetent, remember. We filed the police report. We can act as his agents in an emergency. This is an emergency. He truly believed it. He believed that his need superseded the law. He believed that because he had lived there for free for 5 years, he owned the bricks and the mortar. He grabbed his phone. He had charged it for 20 minutes at a coffee shop the day before while Brittany begged for water. He dialed the number of the most aggressive real estate agent in Atlanta, a man named Bradley, who put his face on billboards and promised to sell anything in 24 hours. Get over here, Marcus barked into the phone, trying to sound like a titan of industry instead of a squatter. I have a property to list. Exclusive estate. Quick sale. Cash only. Bradley arrived an hour later. He pulled up in a white Mercedes that gleamed in the sun. He stepped out wearing a suit that cost $3,000 and a smile that cost $5,000. He looked at the house and saw a commission. He walked up the steps, avoiding the oil stains left by the repossessed cars. Marcus opened the door. He had tried to clean himself up, splashing water on his face in the bathroom sink, but he still looked manic. Bradley, Marcus said, extending a hand. Good to see you. Come in. Excuse the emptiness. We are remodeling. Going for a minimalist vibe before the sale. Bradley walked in. His eyes scanned the vast, empty space. He was a shark, and he smelled blood. He knew people didn't empty a $4 million house to remodel. They emptied it because they were broke or running. But he didn't care. A sale was a sale. It is a magnificent canvas, Bradley said, his voice smooth as oil. Great bones. We can stage it virtually. The market is hot, Marcus. I can have this on the private listing network by noon. What is your asking price? $4 million, Marcus said. Fast close, no inspections. Done, Bradley said. He pulled an iPad out of his briefcase. Let us just get the paperwork started. I need to pull the deed and verify the title. Standard procedure. Marcus nodded, confident. It is under Otis Jefferson, but I have power of attorney. Or I am getting it. Just list it. Bradley tapped on his screen. He connected to the county property records database. He hummed a little tune as he waited for the file to load. Marcus watched him, his heart pounding. He was already spending the money in his head. He was already back in the Porsche, back in the country club, back on top. Bradley stopped humming. He frowned. He tapped the screen again. He zoomed in. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, a cold drop of sweat rolling down his spine. Bradley looked up. The smile was gone. The shark eyes were cold. "Marcus," he said, "you said this property was under Otis Jefferson." "It is," Marcus said. "My father." Bradley turned the iPad around. "Not anymore," he said. Marcus looked at the screen. He squinted, trying to make sense of the legal jargon. "Owner of record, the Clara Jefferson Charity Fund. Date of transfer 3 days ago." Marcus stared at the words. The letters seemed to swim before his eyes. "What is this?" he whispered. "It looks like a quitclaim deed," Bradley said, snapping his briefcase shut. "Your father transferred the title 3 days ago. He donated the property, Marcus. He gave it away." "No," Marcus screamed. "No, that is impossible. He can't do that. It is my inheritance. He can't give away my house." "It is not your house," Bradley said, his voice dripping with disdain now. "It is a charitable asset, and I can't list a property you don't own." "He forged it," Marcus yelled, grabbing Bradley's arm. "He is crazy. He is senile. The transfer is void. You have to list it." "Get your hands off me," Bradley snapped, pulling away and dusting off his suit. "Call a lawyer, Marcus. Do not call me again." Bradley walked out. He got into his Mercedes and drove away, leaving Marcus standing in the open doorway staring at the heat shimmering off the driveway. "He gave it away," Brittany whispered from the corner where she had been listening. "He gave it to Charity." Marcus slammed the door shut. The sound echoed through the empty mansion like a gunshot. "He is lying," Marcus panted, pacing like a trapped animal. "Dad is lying. He just moved it to a shell company to scare us. He wouldn't give this house away. He built it for us. He loves this house. He hates us." Brittany said, her voice flat and dead. "He hates us, Marcus. And he wins." "No," Marcus roared. "We are not leaving. Possession is 9/10 of the law. We live here. This is our legal residence. Legal. He has to evict us. That takes months. We have rights. We will squat. We will fight." He was grasping at straws. He was trying to fight a ghost with bare hands. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't the polite chime of a guest. It was a firm, authoritative press. Marcus froze. "Is it the police?" Brittany asked. Marcus walked to the window. He peered through the blinds. "It is a black sedan," he said. "A Lincoln." He opened the door. Standing on the porch was Saul Steinberg, my lawyer, the man who had been the architect of my business deals for 30 years. He was a small man with glasses thick as bottle bottoms and a mind like a steel trap. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a white envelope in the other. Behind him stood 2 large men in security uniforms. "Mr. Steinberg," Marcus said, trying to summon a shred of dignity. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Steinberg didn't smile. He didn't offer his hand. He looked at Marcus and Brittany with the dispassionate gaze of an exterminator looking at termites. "Marcus," Brittany Steinberg said, stepping into the foyer without asking. The security guards followed him, blocking the door. "Where is my father?" Marcus demanded. "I want to talk to him." He made a mistake with the title. "Your father is unavailable," Steinberg said calmly. "And there is no mistake. I drafted the deed myself." He opened the envelope. He pulled out a document stamped with the official seal of the county court. "This house," Steinberg announced, his voice echoing in the empty hall, "is now the property of the Clara Jefferson Charity Fund. Specifically, it has been designated as a transitional housing facility." "Transitional housing?" Brittany asked, her voice trembling. Steinberg adjusted his glasses. "A homeless shelter, madam. For veterans and their families who have fallen on hard times. It opens next week. The contractors are coming on Monday to install the bunk beds." "A homeless shelter?" Marcus gasped. "In this neighborhood." "It is a private charity," Steinberg said. "Your father felt it was the best use of the space. He wanted to give back to the community. He wanted this house to finally be occupied by people who appreciate a roof over their heads." Marcus felt the room spinning. His father had turned his palace into a shelter. It was the ultimate insult. It was the ultimate poetic justice. You can't do this, Marcus stammered. We live here. You have to evict us. Steinberg smiled a thin, cold smile. Actually, Marcus, we don't. You see, since you never paid rent, since there was no lease agreement in your name, and since the utility bills were all in Otis's name, you are not tenants. You are guests, and guests can be asked to leave at any time. He handed the paper to Marcus. This is a notice to vacate, Steinberg said. However, your father is a generous man. He has authorized a grace period. Grace period, Marcus whispered, clutching the paper. Yes, Steinberg said. He looked at his watch. You have exactly 72 hours. 72 hours for what Brittany asked. To vacate the premises, Steinberg said. You have 72 hours to remove your personal effects and leave the property. If you are still here at noon on Friday, you will be removed by the sheriff for trespassing. Trespassing, Marcus yelled. This is my home. Not anymore, Steinberg said, his voice hard as flint. Now it is a facility for the needy. And while you certainly seem needy, Marcus, you do not meet the criteria for residency. This facility is for people who have served their country or their community. You have only served yourself. Steinberg turned to leave. The security guards remained standing like statues by the door. These gentlemen will remain on the perimeter to ensure the property is not damaged, Steinberg added. They will also ensure you do not strip the copper from the walls. He walked out onto the porch. He stopped and looked back. Oh, and Marcus. Marcus looked up, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down his face. Your father wanted me to tell you one more thing. What Marcus choked out. He said he hopes you enjoy the next 3 days. It is the last time you will ever sleep in a Jefferson property. He suggested you use the time to pack. Or perhaps to look for a job. I hear the gas station down the road is hiring. Steinberg walked down the steps and got into his black car. The heavy door slammed shut. Marcus stood in the hallway of the future homeless shelter holding the eviction notice. Brittany slid down the wall until she hit the floor, screaming a high, thin sound of pure despair. 72 hours. The clock had started ticking. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Jefferson was truly homeless. He just hadn't walked out the door yet. Hunger has a way of stripping the varnish off a person faster than any chemical solvent. It dissolves the manners and the pretenses until all that is left is the raw, gnawing animal instinct to survive. It had been 48 hours since Marcus and Brittany had eaten a proper meal. The $5 I left in Marcus's account had bought them a gallon of water and a bag of chips which they had devoured in the first hour of their exile. Now the water was gone. The taps in the mansion were dry because I had shut off the utility account remotely. The toilets wouldn't flush. The refrigerator was a warm, dark box that smelled of spoiling condiments. I watched the tracking data on Marcus's phone, the only bill I hadn't cut off yet because I wanted to see where they went. They were moving. They were leaving the house on foot. They walked out into the heat of the Georgia afternoon. Marcus was wearing his Italian loafers without socks, his feet already blistered from the walk home 2 days ago. Brittany was clutching a velvet jewelry box to her chest like it was the Holy Grail. They looked like refugees from a fashion show that had been bombed. They were sweating their expensive clothes, clinging to their bodies, their faces gaunt and shiny with grime. They weren't going to a hotel. They couldn't afford one. They were walking 3 miles to the strip mall on the edge of the neighborhood. Specifically, they were heading to Cash for Gold and Pawn. I knew what was in that velvet box. I knew what was on Marcus's wrist. And I knew exactly what was about to happen because, unlike my son, I knew the value of things versus the price of things. They pushed open the door of the pawn shop. The bell chimed. The air inside was cool and smelled of old metal and desperation. A man named Sal sat behind the glass counter. He was used to seeing junkies and desperate gamblers. He wasn't used to seeing a couple in a torn Yves Saint Laurent dress and a wrinkled Armani suit looking like they hadn't showered in 3 days. "Help you folks?" Sal asked, looking up from his magazine. Marcus stepped forward. He tried to project authority, but his voice cracked. He unclasped the watch from his wrist. It was a gold Rolex Daytona. He had bought it 2 years ago from a private dealer in Miami for $30,000. He had bragged about it at every dinner party. He had shoved it in my face once, telling me it was worth more than my truck. "I need to liquidate some assets," Marcus said, sliding the heavy gold watch across the counter. "It is a limited edition. I have the box at home, but I am in a rush. Give me 10,000 cash and we will call it a deal." Sal didn't blink. He picked up the watch. He turned it over. He pulled a jeweler's loop from his pocket and screwed it into his eye. He looked at the dial. He looked at the movement. He laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh. 10,000, Sal asked. Buddy, I couldn't give you 10,000 lira for this. What are you talking about? Marcus demanded, slamming his hand on the counter. That is solid gold. It is a Rolex. It is a replica, Sal said, tossing it back onto the glass. A good one, I will give you that. Probably a super clone out of Shenzhen. But the movement is Japanese quartz, and that gold is plated. It starts rubbing off if you sweat too much. And by the looks of you, you have been sweating a lot. Marcus stared at the watch. He rubbed his thumb over the band. A faint streak of gold flaked off, revealing the cheap steel underneath. But I paid 30,000, Marcus whispered. The guy, he had a certificate. You got scammed, rich boy, Sal said. It happens. It is worth maybe $50 as a novelty. You want the 50 or not? Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. His investment piece, his safety net. It was fake, just like his career, just like his life. Brittany shoved him aside. Move, she snapped. She slammed the velvet box onto the counter. She opened it. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet, a sapphire necklace, and a pair of 2-carat diamond stud earrings. These are real, she said, her voice trembling. The bracelet is from Tiffany. The earrings are flawless. Just give me 5,000. We need a hotel. Sal sighed. He picked up the bracelet. He didn't even use the loop. He just held it up to the light. Cubic zirconia, he said, set in sterling silver. Nice sparkle, but glass is glass. No, Brittany shrieked. That is a lie. Marcus bought that for me for our 5th anniversary. He told me it was platinum and diamonds. She turned to Marcus. Her eyes were wide and manic. You told me it was real, she screamed. You told me you spent 10 grand. I thought it was real. Marcus stammered, shrinking away from her. The jeweler, he said. He said what you wanted to hear, Sal interrupted. Look, folks, I don't have time for a domestic dispute. The silver is worth scrap value. The stones are worthless. I will give you $80 for the whole lot. Take it or leave it. $80, Brittany whispered. $80. We will take it, Marcus said quickly. He grabbed the cash before Brittany could protest. 4 $20 bills. That was all that remained of their empire, their investments, their heirlooms. $80 and a fake watch. They walked out of the pawn shop. The sun was setting now, casting long, cruel shadows across the parking lot. They didn't go to a hotel. $80 wouldn't get them a room in a decent hotel, and they didn't have a credit card for the deposit. They walked to the convenience store next door. They bought 2 styrofoam cups of instant noodles, shrimp flavor. They bought a gallon of water. They bought a cheap flashlight because the power was out. That cost $20. They had 60 left. They sat on the curb outside the store and poured the room temperature water into the noodle cups. They waited for the noodles to soften. They ate in silence, slurping the salty, lukewarm broth. People walked by looking at them with a mixture of pity and confusion. They saw the expensive clothes and the dirt. They saw the ruin. After they ate, they began the long walk back to the house. They had nowhere else to go. They still had 48 hours before the sheriff came. It was a roof, even if it was a dark, hot one. They arrived back at the mansion well after dark. The house loomed against the night sky, a black monolith. It looked abandoned. It looked haunted. They stumbled inside. The heat in the foyer was suffocating. It smelled of stagnant air and defeat. Marcus turned on the cheap flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and the empty spots where the furniture used to be. They sat on the floor in the living room, their backs against the wall. The flashlight sat between them like a dying campfire. This is your fault, Brittany said. Her voice was low in the darkness, but it carried the weight of days of hunger and humiliation. Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at the beam of light, his mind numb. Did you hear me? Brittany hissed. This is your fault, Marcus. All of it. The fake watch, the fake jewelry, the fake job. You lied to me. I didn't lie, Marcus said quietly. I didn't know. You didn't know. Brittany laughed a harsh, ugly sound. You didn't know your daddy was paying for everything. You didn't know you were broke. You walked around like you were the king of Atlanta, and you were just a little boy on an allowance. Shut up, Brittany, Marcus said. No, I won't shut up, she screamed. I married you because I thought you were a winner. I thought you were a provider. But you are nothing. You are a parasite. You lived off that old man's blood, and you didn't even have the brains to keep him happy. You let him leave. You let him cut us off." "I didn't let him do anything," Marcus snapped, turning to face her. "He is crazy. He is vindictive. He is smarter than you," Brittany spat. "He built this. You can't even buy me a real bracelet. You are pathetic, Marcus. You are a joke. My friends are laughing at me. The whole world is laughing at us. And it is because I married a loser who hung onto his daddy's pant leg because he was too scared to be a man." Something snapped inside Marcus. The hunger, the heat, the humiliation of the pawn shop, the realization that his entire identity was a fraud. It all boiled over into a white-hot rage. He didn't think. He didn't argue. He swung. His hand connected with Brittany's cheek with a sharp crack that echoed in the empty room. The silence that followed was instant and terrifying. Brittany put her hand to her face. Her eyes were wide in the flashlight beam. She wasn't crying. She was in shock. "You hit me," she whispered. "You won't shut up," Marcus roared, scrambling to his feet. He was panting, his chest heaving. "I gave you everything. Brittany, I bought you. The cars, I bought you the clothes, I took you to the parties. And all you did was spend. You spent every dime I gave you, and you asked for more. You are the reason we are here, you and your greed." He paced the room, waving his arms at the empty walls. He hated that record player, Marcus yelled. He hated it because you broke it. You pushed him. You treated him like a dog. If you had just been nice to him, if you had just let him listen to his damn music, we would still be rich. This is on you. Brittany stood up slowly. Her face was turning red where he had struck her. Her eyes were cold, dead things. "You are right," she said quietly. "It is on me. It is on me because I stayed." She picked up her purse. She picked up the gallon of water. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, his rage suddenly replaced by panic. "You can't leave. It is dark." "I am going to sleep in the guest room," Brittany said. "The room your father slept in. The room we put him in. Maybe if I sleep there, I will figure out how to be a man, since you clearly don't know how." She walked away into the darkness. Marcus stood alone in the center of the empty living room. The flashlight flickered and dimmed. The cheap batteries were already dying. He sank back down onto the floor. He picked up the empty cup of noodles. He scraped the bottom with his finger, looking for one last salty drop of sustenance. He was alone. He was hungry. He was sitting in a house that wasn't his, wearing a fake watch with $5 in the bank and a wife who despised him. He looked at the darkness surrounding him. He realized then that the darkness wasn't just in the house, it was inside him. It was the void where his character should have been. And for the first time, he understood that money hadn't filled that void. It had only covered it up, and now the cover was gone. He curled into a ball on the hardwood floor and wept, not for his father, not for his wife, but for the pathetic empty creature he had become. The hunger in his belly was nothing compared to the hunger in his soul, and there was no one left to feed him. The idea came to Brittany in the middle of the suffocating darkness of the living room, illuminated only by the dying beam of the flashlight. Hunger does strange things to the mind. It makes you hallucinate, or in Brittany's case, it makes you audacious. She sat up on the hard floor, her eyes reflecting the weak light like a nocturnal animal. "We go public," she whispered, her voice cracking from dehydration. Marcus looked at her from his curled position on the rug. "Go public with what?" he asked. "That we are broke, that we are eating instant noodles in a mansion we don't own." "No," Brittany snapped, finding a reservoir of energy in her own narcissism. "We go public with the abuse. We go to the media. Think about it, Marcus. A wealthy tycoon abandons his only son and daughter-in-law. He leaves them destitute. He steals their future. It is a human interest story. It is a tragedy." She stood up, pacing the small circle of light. "We get on Atlanta Morning. We cry. We tell them he is mentally unstable and vindictive. We tell them we tried to help him and he punished us. The public will eat it up. They hate rich old men who hoard their wealth. They will shame him. The pressure will be so intense he will have to settle. Or at the very least, someone will start a GoFundMe. We could raise thousands, Marcus." Marcus sat up. He looked at his wife. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the logic. It was the only card they had left to play. "Do you think they will believe us?" he asked. Brittany smiled. It was a terrifying expression in the dim light. "Look at us, Marcus. We look like refugees. We are starving. We are dirty. We are the perfect victims." They used the last 2% of battery on Brittany's phone to call the tip line of the local TV station. Brittany was an Oscar-worthy actress that night. She sobbed. She hyperventilated. She painted a picture of Dickensian suffering inflicted by a cruel, demented patriarch. The producer on the other end smelled ratings. A fallen socialite couple. A mysterious missing tycoon. It was gold. They sent a car for them the next morning, not a limo, but a station wagon with the station's logo on the side. Marcus and Brittany walked out of the house, blinking in the sunlight, clutching each other for support. They didn't shower. They didn't change clothes. They wanted the world to see the grime. They wanted the world to smell the poverty. I watched the broadcast from my villa. I had a 60-inch screen set up on the patio, the ocean breeze ruffling the tablecloth. I had a pot of fresh coffee and a plate of fruit. I was ready. I knew Brittany. I knew she couldn't suffer in silence. She had to scream. The show was called The Morning Beat. The host was a woman named Diane, known for her sympathetic nods and her ability to extract tears from a stone. The set was warm, inviting, filled with soft, beige armchairs and fake plants. Marcus and Brittany sat in the chairs looking small and broken. The makeup team had dusted them with powder but left the dark circles under their eyes. It was a nice touch. Diane leaned forward, her face a mask of concern. "We are here today with Marcus and Brittany Jefferson," she said into the camera, "a couple who just a week ago were living the American dream. Today they are fighting for their survival. Marcus, tell us what happened." Marcus looked at the camera. He looked down at his hands. He played the part of the dutiful, confused son perfectly. "It was my father, Diane," he said, his voice trembling. "Otis Jefferson. He has been struggling with his mental health for a while. We tried to protect him. We moved him into our home. We cared for him, but he became paranoid. He started thinking we were his enemies." Brittany jumped in, wiping a dry eye. "We did everything for him," she sobbed. "We cooked for him. We cleaned for him. We sacrificed our privacy to make sure he wasn't lonely. And then he just snapped. He emptied the accounts. He canceled the leases. He left us with nothing. Literally nothing. We haven't eaten a proper meal in 3 days." The camera zoomed in on Brittany's face. "He left us to die in that house," she whispered. "He locked us out of our own lives. It is financial abuse, Diane, plain and simple. He is a billionaire holding his own family hostage." Diane shook her head, looking disgusted. "That is truly heartbreaking," she said. "And you have no idea where he is." "No," Marcus said. "He disappeared. We filed a police report, but he has connections. He paid them off. We are alone. We just want our dad back. We want him to get the help he needs. And we just want to survive." The audience in the studio gasped. Someone booed. The sympathy was palpable. It was thick. They were winning. They were painting me as a monster, a senile tyrant who crushed his children for sport. I picked up my phone. I dialed the station's call-in number. I didn't need to look it up. It was flashing on the bottom of the screen. "Have a tip call now." I got a screener. "Who is this?" the screener asked, bored. "This is Otis Jefferson," I said, "and I would like to exercise my right of reply." The screener paused. I could hear the typing stop. "Hold on," he said. A moment later, the producer came on the line. "Mr. Jefferson, are you watching the broadcast?" "I am," I said. "It is a very creative performance. Put me on the air." The producer didn't hesitate. Controversy was currency. On the screen, Diane pressed her earpiece. Her eyes went wide. She looked at Marcus and Brittany. "Folks," she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, "we have a development. We have a caller on the line. He claims to be Otis Jefferson." Marcus's head snapped up. Brittany stopped crying mid-sob. Their faces went from tragic to terrified in a split second. "Mr. Jefferson," Diane asked, looking at the camera. "Are you there?" "I am here, Diane," I said. My voice boomed through the studio speakers. It was calm. It was deep. It was the voice of a man who had negotiated labor contracts in the rain. Dad Marcus squeaked, "Dad, please, just come home. We can fix this." I ignored him. "Diane," I said, "I have been listening to my son and his wife tell you a story. It is a good story. It has villains and victims. But it is missing one thing." "What is that?" Sir Diane asked. "The truth," I said. Brittany stood up. "He is lying," she screamed. "He is crazy. Cut him off. He is abusive." "Sit down, Brittany," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. It pushed her back into the chair. I am not going to argue with you, Diane, I continued. I am not going to yell. I am just going to play you something. You see, my children claim they wanted to help me. They claim they loved me. I held my phone up to the speaker of the satellite phone. I opened the audio file, the one from the night of the party, the one recorded through the crack in the bedroom door. Let us listen to what they said when they thought no one was listening, I said. I pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. The studio went silent. Brittany's voice filled the room sharp and cruel. It certifies that Otis Jefferson is suffering from advanced vascular dementia. With this document, we don't need his permission to take over the trust. We can file for emergency guardianship tomorrow morning. We can have him committed to the lockdown ward at Sunshine State by Tuesday afternoon. On the screen, Brittany's face turned the color of ash. She looked at the camera, then at the floor, then Marcus's voice. Weak, pathetic. But what if he fights it? And Brittany again. Once Otis realizes what is happening, he will already be in a hospital gown staring at the wall. He will just fade away, Marcus. And the money will be ours. All of it. The land, the accounts, the legacy. I let the recording play to the end. I let the silence that followed stretch out until it was unbearable. Diane was staring at her guests with open horror. The audience was silent. The sympathy had evaporated, instantly replaced by a cold, hard shock. Mr. Jefferson, Diane stammered. Is that authentic? It is, I said. That was recorded 4 days ago, the night before I left. They weren't planning to care for me, Diane. They were planning to imprison me. They paid a corrupt doctor to falsify a medical record so they could steal the company I built with my bare hands. I paused. They are not victims, I said. They are failed conspirators. And the reason they are hungry is because for the first time in their lives, they have to pay for their own lunch. I hung up. On the screen, chaos erupted. Diane turned on them. She was a journalist, and she realized she had been played. Her face hardened. Is this true? She demanded. Did you plan to commit your father to access his trust? Marcus tried to speak. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping on a dock. Brittany tried to rally. She stood up, her eyes wild. It is out of context, she shrieked. It was a joke. We were stressed. He doctored the tape. He is the villain here. Can't you see? He is framing us. The audience started to boo. It started low, a rumble in the back. Then it grew. Someone shouted, "Shame." Someone else threw a crumpled piece of paper at the stage. Get them off, Diane said to her producer, cutting her hand across her throat. Go to commercial. The feed cut to a detergent commercial. But the damage was done. It was nuclear. I sat back in my chair on the balcony. I poured myself another cup of coffee. The sun was shining on the water. It was a beautiful day. Back in the studio, Marcus and Brittany were being escorted out by security, not because they were dangerous, but because the station didn't want them in the building anymore. They were liabilities. They were pariahs. They walked out the back door into the alley behind the studio. It was raining now, a sudden summer downpour that soaked their clothes and plastered their hair to their skulls. They stood in the rain, shivering. They had no ride. The station wagon had left. They had no money for a taxi. They had just been exposed as monsters on live television to the entire city of Atlanta. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chief Miller. Just saw the show, Otis. Remind me never to play poker with you. Also, the district attorney just called me. He wants a copy of that tape. Attempted fraud and conspiracy. It is getting interesting down here. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Marcus and Brittany started walking. They walked in the rain, their expensive shoes squelching in the mud. They weren't walking home because they didn't have a home. They were walking aimlessly into a city that now knew exactly who they were. They had wanted fame. They had wanted attention. They had wanted the world to see them. Well, they got their wish. The world saw them, and the world looked away in disgust. The play was entering its final act. They were broke. They were homeless. They were publicly shamed. But there was one more trap waiting for them, one last desperate move Marcus would make. And I had the snare ready. I watched the waves crash against the rocks below. The tide was coming in, and it was going to wash everything clean. Rain has a way of washing away the dirt, but it cannot wash away shame. The rain that fell on Atlanta that afternoon was cold and relentless, soaking Marcus and Brittany to the bone as they huddled under the awning of a closed newsstand. They were shivering, not just from the drop in temperature, but from the withdrawal of the only drug they had ever known, which was validation. They had gone on television to be victims, and they had left as pariahs. The city knew. The world knew. They were no longer the golden couple of Buckhead. They were the grifters who tried to lock up a grandfather. Marcus wiped the water from his eyes with a sleeve that used to be silk but now felt like a wet rag. He looked at Brittany. She was staring at the pavement, her teeth chattering, her eyes vacant. She was in shock. The reality of their situation was finally penetrating the thick armor of her entitlement. They had no money, they had no home, they had no friends, and now thanks to my phone call they had no reputation. "We need money," Marcus whispered. His voice was frantic, a high-pitched keen that was barely audible over the sound of the rain. "We need money now, Brittany. We can't stay on the street. We will die out here." Brittany looked up slowly. Her makeup had washed away, revealing the pale, terrified face of a woman who had never faced a real problem in her life. Where Marcus, she asked, her voice hollow. "Where are we going to get money? You heard the bank. You heard your father. He took it all." "He didn't take it all," Marcus said, and suddenly his eyes lit up with a dangerous, manic light. He forgot something. What Brittany asked, hope flickering in her eyes like a dying candle. "The pension fund," Marcus said. "The executive pension fund from Jefferson Logistics." I watched them from my terrace, the satellite feed from the street camera grainy but clear enough to see the desperation in their posture. I knew exactly what Marcus was thinking because I had designed the trap he was about to walk into. Years ago, when I made Marcus a director in name only, I had set up a deferred compensation fund. It had a balance of $250,000. It was a nest egg I had intended for his retirement, assuming he ever actually worked. Marcus thought I had forgotten it. He thought that in my haste to liquidate the active accounts I had overlooked this dormant asset. He didn't know that the fund was radioactive. "Come on," Marcus said, grabbing Brittany's hand. "We need a computer. We need internet." They ran through the rain, splashing through puddles, their expensive shoes ruined beyond repair. They ran 3 blocks to the public library. It was a place neither of them had ever entered in their lives. They walked in dripping wet, leaving a trail of water on the linoleum floor. The librarian looked up over her glasses. She saw 2 people who looked like drowned rats wearing costumes of wealth. She didn't stop them. "It is a public library. Even the fallen are welcome." They found a computer terminal in the back corner. Marcus sat down, his hands shaking so badly he could barely type. Brittany stood behind him, acting as a human shield blocking the screen from prying eyes. Marcus navigated to the benefits portal of the old company. He typed in his old employee ID. He typed in the password he hadn't used in 5 years. Access granted. He gasped. It worked. The portal opened. There it was. The Jefferson Logistics Executive Deferred Compensation Plan. Current balance, $252,450. "Oh my God," Brittany whispered, leaning in, her wet hair dripping onto Marcus's shoulder. "It is there. $250,000. Marcus, transfer it. Transfer it now." Marcus clicked the withdrawal tab. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a sledgehammer. This was it. This was their salvation. With this money they could get a hotel, they could buy new clothes, they could hire a lawyer to fight me, they could survive. He selected full liquidation. Then he entered the routing number for an online bank account he had opened 10 minutes ago using a fake address because he couldn't use the frozen accounts. He hit next. A dialog box popped up. "Warning, early withdrawal requires authorization from the primary trustee." Marcus froze. The primary trustee. That was me. "He needs to sign it," Marcus hissed. "He needs to authorize the release." Brittany gripped his shoulder, her nails digging into his flesh. "He won't sign it," she said. "He wants us to starve. You have to do it, Marcus." "Do what Marcus asked." "Sign it for him," Brittany said. "You have his digital signature saved in your old email from the time you signed those lease papers for the warehouse. Just copy and paste it. Or forge it. Who is going to know? He is gone. He is on an island. He won't see the notification in time. By the time he notices, the money will be gone." Marcus hesitated. He was a greedy man. He was a selfish man. But he had never been a criminal. Not a federal one. He knew that forging a signature on a financial document was a felony. He knew it was wire fraud. But then he looked at Brittany. He saw the shivering. He saw the hunger. He looked at his own reflection in the dark monitor, a ghost of the man he used to be. Desperation is a blind guide. It doesn't see the cliff. It only sees the path away from the fire. "I have to do it," he whispered. "It is my money anyway. I earned it. I was a director." He convinced himself of the lie. He opened a new tab. He found an old PDF with my signature. He used a snipping tool. He copied the image of my signature. Otis Jefferson, the signature that had built an empire. He went back to the bank portal. He uploaded the image into the authorization field. Upload complete. Please confirm that you are the primary trustee and authorized to release these funds. Marcus stared at the box. "Do it," Brittany hissed. Marcus clicked the box. "Submit." The screen went white. A little spinning circle appeared. Marcus held his breath. Brittany held her breath. They waited for the confirmation screen. They waited for the message that would say, "Funds transferred." But the screen didn't turn green. It turned red. A message appeared. "Transaction flagged. Code red. Please contact compliance." "What?" Marcus whispered. "What is code red?" I sat on my balcony and I smiled. Code red wasn't a bank error. Code red was a federal tripwire. Marcus didn't know the history of that pension fund. He didn't know that 5 years ago, Jefferson Logistics had been the target of an attempted hostile takeover by a foreign entity that used shell companies to launder money. To protect the company, I had worked with the FBI. We had set up trap accounts monitors on the pension funds to catch any unauthorized movement of large assets. The investigation was technically closed, but the monitoring protocols were still active. Specifically, that account was tagged by the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division as a high-risk asset. Any attempt to liquidate that fund without my biometric verification didn't just alert the bank. It alerted the field office in Atlanta. Inside the library, the computer terminal suddenly froze. Marcus tried to move the mouse. It was locked. "What is happening?" Brittany asked, panic rising in her voice. "It is frozen," Marcus said, clicking frantically. Then the screen changed. The red message disappeared. It was replaced by a single static image. The seal of the Department of Justice. "This terminal has been locked by federal authorities. Remain where you are." Marcus pushed his chair back, the screech of the legs on the floor sounding like a scream. "Run," he whispered. "What?" Brittany asked. "Run," Marcus yelled, jumping up. "It is a trap. It is the feds." He grabbed her hand. They ran toward the exit. They didn't care about the librarian shushing them. They didn't care about the other patrons staring. They just ran. They burst out of the library doors back into the rain. They ran down the steps, slipping on the wet concrete. They scrambled to their feet, scraping their hands and knees. They made it to the sidewalk. They looked left. They looked right. Blue lights. They were coming from both ends of the street. Silent but blinding. Unmarked black SUVs with lights flashing in the grill. Marcus stopped. He dropped Brittany's hand. He looked at the cars boxing them in. He looked at the men stepping out. They weren't regular police. They wore blue windbreakers with yellow letters on the back. FBI. This wasn't about a missing person report anymore. This wasn't about a civil dispute over a house. This was attempted wire fraud. This was identity theft involving a federally monitored financial instrument. Mr. Jefferson, an agent, shouted, his hand resting on his holster. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus raised his hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. The rain mixed with the tears on his face. "I didn't do it," he sobbed. "It was a mistake. I just wanted my pension." "Get down on your knees," the agent commanded. Marcus dropped to his knees in the puddles. Brittany stood there frozen, screaming silently. "Get down, ma'am," the agent yelled. She dropped down beside him. Her expensive dress soaked in the dirty water of the gutter. They cuffed Marcus first. The click of the metal was heavy and final. Then they cuffed Brittany. "You have the right to remain silent," the agent recited. Marcus looked up. He looked at the sky. He wasn't looking for God. He was looking for me. He knew somehow that I was watching. "Dad!" he screamed into the rain. "Dad, help me!" But I wasn't there. I was 1,000 miles away listening to the sound of the ocean. He had walked into the trap with his eyes open, driven by greed and blinded by arrogance. He had tried to steal from the one place he thought I hadn't looked, and he found out that I had looked everywhere. They shoved Marcus into the back of the black SUV. They shoved Brittany into another. The doors slammed shut. The convoy pulled away, disappearing into the rain-slicked traffic of the city. The library street was quiet again. It was over. The dismantling was complete. He had lost the money. He had lost the house. He had lost his reputation. And now he had lost his freedom. I closed my laptop. I didn't feel joy. I felt a heavy, somber relief. It is a terrible thing to watch your child destroy himself, but it is a necessary thing when that child becomes a monster. I picked up my phone. I sent a text to Steinberg. They took the bait. It is in the hands of the law now. Steinberg replied instantly. The best lessons are the ones that leave scars, Otis. He will have plenty of time to study now. I stood up and walked to the railing of the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the Caribbean sky in violent shades of red and gold. Tomorrow I would go fishing. Tomorrow I would read a book. Tomorrow I would live. But for Marcus, tomorrow would be a cold steel cell and a lawyer he couldn't afford. The invoice had finally come due. The fluorescent lights of the Federal Detention Center buzzed with a sound like trapped flies. It was a sound that drove men mad if they listened to it long enough. I sat in the visitor's room on the clean side of the reinforced glass. I wasn't wearing my flannel shirt today. I wasn't wearing my work boots. I was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit I had commissioned in London 20 years ago, a suit that had hung in the back of my closet waiting for a day when Otis Jefferson needed to be the chairman again. My shoes were Italian leather polished to a mirror shine. I had shaved. I had slept for 10 hours a night for the past 2 weeks. I looked in the reflection of the glass and I didn't see a 75-year-old retiree. I saw a man who had taken back his life. I checked my watch. It was a Patek Philippe, another asset Marcus didn't know I owned. 10 o'clock. The heavy steel door on the other side of the glass buzzed and clicked open. A guard stepped in, followed by a man in an orange jumpsuit. It took me a moment to recognize him. Marcus had always been a man who cared about his appearance. He spent more on haircuts in a month than I spent on groceries. He manicured his nails. He tailored his shirts to hide the softness of his waist. The man who shuffled to the chair was a stranger. His head was shaved, a standard procedure for lice control. His face was gaunt, covered in a patchy gray stubble. His eyes were red-rimmed and sunken, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. He looked small. He looked like a child wearing a costume that was too big for him. He sat down. He picked up the phone receiver. His hands were shaking. I could see the tremors from where I sat. I picked up my phone. "Dad," Marcus whispered. His voice was cracked and dry. "Dad, you came." I looked at him. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at him with the dispassionate gaze of an auditor reviewing a bankrupt ledger. "Hello, Marcus," I said. "Dad, you have to get me out of here." Marcus said the words, tumbling out in a rush of panic. "It is a nightmare in here. The food, the noise. I can't sleep. There are guys in here who look at me. I am scared, Dad. You have to post bail." "Bail is set at $500,000, I said, calm and steady. "The judge considered you a flight risk. Attempted wire fraud crossing state lines using a digital device. It is a serious charge, son." I know, Marcus sobbed, pressing his forehead against the glass. "I made a mistake. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking. But you have the money, Dad. You have millions. 500,000 is nothing to you. Just pay it. Please, I will pay you back, I swear. I will work. I will do anything." I listened to him beg. I listened to the same entitlement that had driven him to try and lock me away, only now it was wrapped in fear instead of arrogance. He still thought my money was the solution to his problems. He still thought he could spend his way out of consequences. He looked at my suit. He looked at my watch. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "You look different," he said. "I feel different," I replied. "I feel like a man who isn't carrying a 200-pound weight on his back anymore." "Dad, please," Marcus said, focusing back on his own misery. "Call Steinberg. Tell him to cut the check. Get me a lawyer. The public defender they gave me is an idiot. He says I should plead guilty. He says they have the IP address. He says they have the signature match. I need a real lawyer, Dad. I need the best." I leaned forward. I rested my elbows on the stainless steel counter. "Do you remember the record player, Marcus?" I asked. Marcus blinked. "What, the record player?" I said. "The one you broke. The one you said was a waste of money." "Dad, why are you talking about that?" Marcus cried. "I am in jail." "You said I was wasting your inheritance," I continued, ignoring his outburst. "You said I was throwing money away. You were very specific about how I should spend my capital. I didn't mean it, Marcus wailed. I was stressed. You meant every word I said, and you know what, son? You were right. Right, Marcus asked, hope sparking in his eyes. Yes, I said. I was wasting money. I was wasting it on a mortgage for a house you didn't appreciate. I was wasting it on cars you didn't earn. I was wasting it on bailing you out of every bad decision you ever made. I paused, letting the words sink in. So I took your advice, Marcus. I stopped wasting money. Marcus went still. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by a cold, dawning horror. What are you saying? He whispered. I am saying that a high-priced criminal defense attorney costs $500 an hour, I said. Bail is $500,000. That is a lot of money, Marcus. And as you pointed out, I am on a fixed income. I have to be careful with my retirement. Dad, no, Marcus gasped. You can't leave me in here. I am your son. You are a criminal, I corrected him. You forged a signature. You tried to steal federal pension funds. You conspired to defraud the government. Those aren't mistakes, Marcus. Those are choices, and choices have price tags. But I am family, he screamed, slamming his hand against the glass. The guard behind him took a step forward, his hand on his taser. Family doesn't try to put their father in a mental institution, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than his scream. Family doesn't call a cosmetic surgeon to fake a dementia diagnosis. Family doesn't leave their father to rot in a nursing home so they can buy a boat. I didn't do that. Brittany did, Marcus blubbered. It was her idea. She made me. I shook my head. A man is responsible for his own house, I said. You signed the papers. You made the calls. You tried to steal the pension. Don't blame your wife for your weakness. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I adjusted my cuffs. Where are you going? Marcus yelled, jumping up. Sit down, Dad, sit down. You have to help me. I looked at him through the glass one last time. I looked at the boy I had loved, the man I had disappointed by giving him too much. You wanted to be independent, Marcus, I said. You wanted to run the show. You wanted to be the man. I leaned close to the glass. This is what independence looks like, son. It looks like facing a judge without your daddy's checkbook. It looks like eating what they serve you. It looks like sleeping on a cot. This is the first day of your real life. No, Marcus screamed, tears streaming down his face. No, I don't waste money on lawyers for criminals, I said. Good luck with the public defender. I hear he is very busy. I hung up the phone. I turned my back on him. I heard him screaming through the glass, muffled and distorted. I heard the guard shouting orders. I heard the scuffle as they restrained him. I didn't look back. I walked out of the visiting room. I walked down the long gray hallway. I walked through the security checkpoint. I stepped out into the bright sunshine of the parking lot. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like justice. I got into the rental car, a modest sedan that suited my new life. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I didn't see guilt. I didn't see regret. I saw a father who had finally done his job. I had taught him the hardest lesson of all. I started the car and drove away, leaving my son in the cage he had built for himself. He had wanted my money. Now he had my lesson, and it was going to last him a lifetime. The clock struck noon on Friday, and the deadline arrived with the punctuality of a hangman. I was not there to see it, but my lawyer Saul Steinberg was. He stood on the porch of the mansion that was no longer a home, but a charitable asset, checking his watch with the precision of a man who billed by the minute. Behind him stood the sheriff's deputies, not the private security this time, but the county law enforcement men with badges and guns and zero patience for squatters. Brittany had spent the last 72 hours in a state of paralysis, oscillating between hysterical crying and manic packing. She had tried to fit her entire wardrobe into suitcases, but without the Range Rover to haul them, she realized the futility of her materialism. She couldn't carry 10 years of excess on her back. When the sheriff knocked, it wasn't a polite tap. It was the heavy thud of authority. Brittany opened the door. She was wearing a designer tracksuit that was stained and wrinkled, and her face was devoid of makeup, revealing the stark terror underneath. She looked past the sheriff, hoping to see Marcus, hoping he had found a miracle bail bond, hoping I had changed my mind. But there was only the heat and the law. "Time is up, ma'am," the sheriff said. "You need to vacate the premises immediately." Brittany grabbed 2 suitcases. They were heavy, stuffed with clothes she would have no occasion to wear in her new life. She dragged them across the marble foyer, the wheels clicking on the grout lines, counting down the seconds of her exit. She stepped out onto the porch. The heat hit her like a physical blow. She dragged the bags down the steps. She reached the driveway where the oil stains from the repossessed cars still marked the pavement like shadows. She stopped and looked back. Steinberg was already handing a set of keys to a contractor. A truck pulled up filled with bunk beds for the veterans. The transformation had begun. She walked down the long driveway, the wheels of her suitcases struggling against the gravel. She reached the public road. She had no car, she had no husband, she had $80 in cash and a phone that was blowing up with hate mail from the internet. She did the only thing a woman like Brittany knew how to do. She called her mother. Her parents lived in a gated community in Buckhead, a place of manicured lawns and hushed whispers. They were people who valued reputation above oxygen. Brittany called a rideshare using the last of her cash to get there. She thought she was going home. She thought that no matter what happened, blood was thicker than water. She was wrong. In her world, reputation was thicker than anything. She arrived at her parents' house an hour later, dragging her luggage up the walkway. She rang the doorbell. She waited. She saw the curtain twitch. She knew they were home. The door opened. It wasn't her mother. It was the housekeeper, a woman Brittany had treated with disdain for years. Mrs. Robinson isn't seeing visitors, the housekeeper said, keeping the chain on the door. Maria, it is me, Brittany cried, pushing against the wood. Let me in. I need to talk to my mom. Her mother appeared behind Maria. She looked immaculate, cold, and furious. She didn't open the door further. She spoke through the crack. Go away, Brittany, her mother said. Her voice was ice. Mom, please, Brittany sobbed. I have nowhere to go. Marcus is in jail. Otis took everything. I need a room, just for a few nights. You need a reality check, her mother hissed. Do you have any idea what you have done to us? The phone hasn't stopped ringing. The country club revoked our membership this morning pending a review of our character. The pastor called to say we should take a leave of absence from the deacon board. You are a viral sensation, Brittany. A monster. You and that husband of yours plotted to commit an old man. It is disgusting. But Mom, I did it for us, Brittany pleaded. I did it to secure the future. You did it and you got caught, her mother snapped. And now you want to drag your scandal into my house. No. We have a standing in this community. I will not have news vans parked on my lawn. Mom, I have no money, Brittany wailed. Then get a job, her mother said. I hear the world is full of them. She closed the door. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was louder than the slam of a prison cell. Brittany stood on the porch of her childhood home, rejected by the people who had taught her to be exactly who she was. She realized with a terrified clarity that she wasn't their daughter anymore. She was a liability. She walked away. She walked until her heels blistered. She walked until the sun went down. She slept that night in a bus shelter, clutching her suitcases, terrified that someone would steal the last remnants of her former life. The fall was fast, and it was brutal. Without money, without friends, and without a husband to leech off of, Brittany had to survive. She applied for jobs at boutiques, but they recognized her face from the news. She applied for receptionist gigs, but a quick Google search of her name brought up the video of her screaming at me in the TV studio. She was radioactive. 2 weeks later, she found herself standing in front of a place she would have previously crossed the street to avoid, the Rusty Spoon. It was a diner on the outskirts of town near the industrial park. It smelled of grease-burnt coffee and stale cigarettes. The floor was sticky. The neon sign flickered with a buzzing sound. It was the kind of place truck drivers ate, the kind of place I used to eat at 40 years ago when I was building the business. She walked in. She wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore. She was wearing jeans she had bought at a thrift store and a t-shirt that didn't fit. She asked for the manager. A large woman named Barb came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a stained apron. She looked Brittany up and down. She saw the soft hands. She saw the desperate eyes. You ever waited tables? Honey Barb asked. No, Brittany whispered. You think you are too good for this? Barb asked, narrowing her eyes. No, Brittany said quickly, tears welling in her eyes. No, ma'am, I am not too good for anything. I need to eat. Barb nodded. Grab an apron, $6 an hour plus tips, and if you drop a plate, it comes out of your pay. Brittany put on the apron. It was stained with ketchup and mustard. It smelled of onions. She tied the strings around her waist. She picked up a pot of coffee, and she started to work. For the next month, Brittany learned what work actually was. She learned that standing on your feet for 10 hours hurts. She learned that customers can be rude, entitled, and cheap. She learned that $1 isn't just a piece of paper, it is 20 minutes of scrubbing tables. She served men who reminded her of the man she had called a simple truck driver. She poured coffee for guys with grease under their fingernails, guys who worked hard and tipped what they could. She cried every night in the small room she rented in a boarding house, but she kept going back, because hunger is a powerful motivator. One Tuesday afternoon, about a month after Marcus had been denied bail, I decided to take a drive. I wasn't in my helicopter. I was in a modest sedan I had rented. I drove out to the industrial park. I pulled into the parking lot of the Rusty Spoon. I adjusted my cap. I put on a pair of sunglasses. I walked in. The diner was busy. The lunch rush was winding down, but there were still plenty of drivers filling up on meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I sat in a booth near the back. I picked up a laminated menu that was sticky to the touch. A waitress approached. She was looking down at her notepad, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her uniform stained with gravy. "What can I get you, hun?" she asked, her voice tired and flat. I looked up. "Hello, Brittany," I said. She froze. The pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. She looked at me. Her eyes went wide. She went pale. She looked around the diner as if expecting a SWAT team or a camera crew. "Otis," she whispered. I took off my sunglasses. I looked at her. She looked thin. She looked tired. She looked older than her 35 years. But for the first time, she looked real. "I will have the special," I said calmly. "Meatloaf, green beans, and coffee. Black." Brittany stood there trembling. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to grip the edge of the table. "Are you here to make fun of me?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Are you here to laugh?" "I am here to eat lunch, Brittany," I said. "I hear the meatloaf is good." She stared at me for a long moment. She was waiting for the insults. She was waiting for me to lecture her. But I didn't. I just waited. She swallowed hard. She picked up her pen. "Meatloaf," she wrote, her hand unsteady. "Coffee." She walked away. I watched her go. I watched her go to the counter, shout the order to the cook, pour the coffee. She didn't spill a drop. She walked back and placed the cup in front of me. "Thank you," I said. She nodded and fled to the safety of the kitchen. I ate my meal. It was good, honest food. While I ate, I watched her work. I saw her handle a rude customer at the next table, a man who complained about his eggs. She didn't snap. She didn't call him names. She apologized and offered to fix it. She was learning. When I was finished, I wiped my mouth with the paper napkin. I asked for the check. Brittany brought it to the table. She wouldn't look me in the eye. The bill was $12.50. I took out my wallet. I pulled out a $20 bill to cover the food. Then I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a crisp $100 bill. I placed it on the table. Brittany looked at the money. She looked at me. Confusion warred with shame in her eyes. Why, she asked. "Why are you doing this? After everything I did?" I took a pen from my pocket. I grabbed a napkin. I wrote a short note. "Work hard. Don't waste it." I slid the napkin and the money toward her. "I am paying for the service, Brittany," I said. "Today you gave good service. You worked for this. It is the first honest money you have earned in a long time." "But I tried to commit you," she whispered, tears spilling over. "I called you a driver. I said you were nothing. I know I said standing up, and now you know what a driver's life looks like. You know what it feels like to serve." I put my hat back on. "Keep the change," I said. I walked out of the diner. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see her reaction. I knew what she was feeling. It wasn't gratitude exactly, it was the crushing weight of realization. She finally understood that the money she had chased so desperately wasn't magic. It was sweat. It was time. It was sore feet and burnt coffee. I got into my car and drove away. I left her there in the grease and the noise holding a $100 bill that meant more than the thousands I had given her before, because this time she understood the cost. Brittany stood by the table staring at the bill. She touched it. It was real. She looked at the note. "Work hard. Don't waste it." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She put the money in her apron pocket. She picked up the empty coffee cup. "Hey," Barb shouted from the kitchen. "Order up table 4. "Coming," Brittany yelled back. She turned and walked toward the kitchen. She wasn't a socialite anymore. She wasn't a victim. She was a waitress, and for the first time in her life, she was earning her keep. The salt air of the Florida coast has a way of curing things. It cures the wood of the deck where I spend my mornings. It cures the catch of the day that my neighbor brings over on Friday nights. And slowly, day by day, it has started to cure the deep, ragged wound in my chest that my son left behind. It has been exactly 1 year since I walked out of that prison visitor room, leaving Marcus screaming behind the glass. 1 year since I disappeared from Atlanta and re-emerged here in a quiet corner of the Keys where the ocean stretches out like a sheet of hammered turquoise, and the only sirens I hear are the ones in my nightmares, which are becoming less frequent every week. I sat in my favorite wicker chair, the one with the thick cushions that ease the ache in my 76-year-old back. The sun was dipping low, painting the water in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange. On the table next to me sat the record player. It was the same one, the 1955 mahogany beauty that Brittany had shoved off the counter. It had taken me 3 months and a specialist in Miami to restore it. He had to source parts from Germany and rebuild the casing by hand. It cost me 4 times what I originally paid for it, but every penny was worth it. Because now, as the needle found the groove, the rich, warm sound of John Coltrane's saxophone filled the humid air, unblemished and soulful. It was the sound of resilience. It was the sound of something broken being made whole again. I wasn't alone. For the first time in a decade, my house wasn't filled with people who wanted something from me. It was filled with people who just wanted to be there. Sitting on the railing of the deck, sketching in a large pad, was Chloe. My granddaughter looked different. The tension that used to live in her shoulders, the guarded look in her eyes that came from living in a war zone of narcissism, was gone. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun held together by a pencil. She was wearing shorts and a t-shirt covered in charcoal dust. She was 20 years old now, a junior in architecture school, and she was thriving. She visited me every break. She didn't come for money. She came for the quiet. She came to show me her designs for sustainable housing, passionate about building things that lasted, unlike her parents, who only cared about things that glittered. "Hey, Pop," she said, looking up from her sketch. "Earl is cheating at dominoes again." I looked over at the patio table. Earl and Silas were arguing, their voices raised in mock anger. Earl was a retired shrimper I had met at the local bait shop. Silas was a former mechanic who fixed boat engines. They didn't know I was a multi-millionaire logistics tycoon. To them, I was just Otis, the guy who told good stories and bought the good bourbon. They drove beat-up trucks. They wore clothes they bought at Walmart. They were the richest men I knew. "I am not cheating, Silas," Earl yelled, slapping a domino down on the glass table with a crack. "It is called strategy, you old fool. Read the board. Otis, tell him." Silas shouted, waving a beer bottle in my direction. "Tell him you can't play a double six when the train is closed." I laughed. It was a deep, belly-shaking laugh that felt good in my throat. "I am staying out of it, boys," I said. "Last time I refereed, you made me buy the stakes. This is my life now. Simple. Authentic. There are no galas. No charity auctions where people bid on useless things to prove their worth. No leased Porsches in the driveway. Just a Jeep Wrangler that I used to drive on the beach, and these 2 knuckleheads arguing about dominoes while Coltrane plays in the background." Chloe put down her sketch pad and walked over to me. She sat on the ottoman at my feet. She looked at the record player spinning. "It sounds perfect," she said softly. "You can't even tell it was broken." I ran my hand over the wood. I could feel the faint seam where the craftsman had fused the cracked casing. "You can tell if you look close," I said. "The scars are there. But I think it plays better now. It has character." She looked at me, her eyes searching my face. She knew what I was really talking about. "Have you heard anything?" she asked. She didn't have to say his name. "Marcus." I looked out at the ocean. The waves were rhythmic, hypnotic. "Steinberg sends me a report once a month," I said. "He is in a medium security facility in Alabama. He is working in the laundry. He is keeping his head down. He has lost 30 pounds. Chloe nodded. She picked at a loose thread on the cushion. "Mom called me," she said. "From the diner." I tensed. I couldn't help it. The memory of Brittany was still a phantom limb, an itch I couldn't scratch. What did she want? I asked. "Nothing," Chloe said. That was the weird part. She just wanted to tell me she got promoted to shift manager. She sounded tired, but proud. She asked how you were. She asked about me. I asked, surprised. "Yeah." She told me to tell you that the meatloaf is still good. I smiled. A small, sad smile. "Good," I said. Good for her. It was strange to feel this absence of anger. For so long, rage had been the fuel that kept me moving. Rage at their betrayal, rage at their greed. but the rage had burned out, leaving behind a quiet ash of acceptance. I realized that holding on to the anger was just another way of letting them control me. Letting it go was the final act of eviction. I looked at Chloe. "Do you miss them?" I asked. She thought about it. She watched a pelican dive into the water, splashing down hard. "I miss the idea of them," she said finally. "I miss having parents. But I don't miss the people they were. I don't miss the screaming. I don't miss the fear that the lights were going to get cut off because Dad bought a new watch instead of paying the bill." She squeezed my hand. "I have you, Pop, and I have myself." That is enough. It was enough. It was more than enough. Earl stood up cheering. He had won the game. Silas was grumbling, counting out dollar bills. "All right, Otis," Earl said, walking over. "You are up. I am going to take your money next." I stood up. My knees didn't pop as much in the warm Florida weather. I walked over to the table. I sat down and shuffled the tiles. The plastic clicked against the glass. It was a solid, real sound. As I played, I thought about the empty mansion back in Atlanta. Steinberg had sent me photos. It was full now, full of veterans, men and women who had served their country and fallen on hard times. They were sleeping in the bedrooms where Marcus had plotted against me. They were cooking meals in the kitchen where Brittany had sneered at my record player. The house was alive again. It had a purpose. It wasn't a monument to ego anymore. It was a sanctuary. I thought about Marcus in his cell. I hoped he was looking at the ceiling. I hoped he was thinking. I hoped that the silence of prison was teaching him what my voice never could. I didn't hate him. You can't hate your own blood forever. But I knew I couldn't save him. I had to let him drown so he could learn to swim. I slammed a domino down. "Double five," Silas groaned. Earl whistled. "You have been practicing old man Earl accused." "I have a lot of free time," I said, winking at Chloe. The sun finally slipped below the horizon. The sky turned a deep, velvety blue. The stars began to pop out one by one, millions of them unpolluted by the city lights. I took a sip of my iced tea. It was cold and sweet. I looked around my deck. I looked at the repaired record player spinning my memories. I looked at my granddaughter sketching her future. I looked at my friends arguing over a dollar bet. I wasn't a tycoon here. I wasn't a target. I wasn't a paycheck. I was just Otis. And for the first time in a very long time, I realized I was happy. Not the frantic, manic happiness of acquiring things, but the deep, settling happiness of having enough. I had emptied my son's bank accounts. I had taken back my life. And in the process, I had found something I didn't know I was looking for. Peace. The record ended. The needle clicked and returned to its cradle. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. It was the sound of a life that finally belonged to me. I looked at Chloe. "Put on another one, baby girl," I said. She smiled and flipped through the stack of vinyl. "Which one, Pop?" she asked. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, listening to the ocean breathing against the shore. "Something with a beat," I said. "Something alive." She put on Miles Davis. The trumpet cut through the night, sharp and clear. I tapped my foot. I played my tile. I was home. The ink from my pen flowed onto the heavy, cream-colored stationery I had bought specifically for this moment. It was a slow, deliberate process, writing by hand. In a world of emails and text messages and wire transfers, I wanted this final communication to have weight. I wanted Marcus to feel the texture of the paper in his hands while he sat on the edge of his steel cot in the medium security facility that was now his home. I wanted him to see the steadiness of my handwriting, the lack of tremors, the absolute clarity of a man who has finally made peace with the hardest decision of his life. I sat at the teak desk in my Florida living room, the glass doors open to the evening breeze. The sound of the ocean was a rhythmic metronome keeping time as I composed the last words my son would ever read from me. It wasn't a long letter. It didn't need to be. The time for lectures was over. The time for warnings had passed 20 years ago. This was simply a notification of closure. "Dear Marcus," I wrote, "by now you have probably realized that no lawyer is coming. You have probably realized that the bail bondsman isn't going to take a call from a number he doesn't recognize. You are sitting in a cell because you broke the law, but you are staying in that cell because I broke the cycle." I stopped and looked out at the horizon. I imagined him reading this. I imagined the hope flaring in his eyes when the guard handed him the envelope thinking it was a check or a legal strategy, and then I imagined the light dying as he read the first lines. I continued writing. For 40 years, I thought my job was to give you the world. I thought that because I grew up with holes in my shoes and hunger in my belly, my duty was to ensure you never felt a moment of discomfort. I thought that was love. I built a company from dirt and sweat so you could have a path paved with gold. I bought you cars you didn't know how to fix. I bought you houses you didn't know how to maintain. I gave you a title at the company that you didn't earn. I paused. The pen hovered over the paper. This was the part that hurt. This was the confession. I was wrong, Marcus. I failed you. I didn't fail you because I was tough. I failed you because I was weak. I was too scared to let you fall. I was too scared to let you struggle. I robbed you of the most important experience a man can have, the experience of building himself. I created a vacuum inside you and I tried to fill it with money. But money doesn't fill the soul, son. It just rots it if there is no character to hold it. I took a sip of my iced tea. The condensation dripped onto the desk. I wiped it away. You asked me in the visiting room about the trust. You asked about the inheritance. You screamed that it was your money. I am writing this to tell you formally and finally that there is no inheritance for you. I pressed the pen harder into the paper. Yesterday I met with Saul Steinberg. We executed the final amendment to the Jefferson Family Trust. The liquid assets, the real estate portfolio, the intellectual property of the logistics systems, every single dime I have accumulated over 50 years has been reallocated. 50% of the estate has been placed into the Clara Jefferson Scholarship Fund. It will pay for the education of children from the neighborhood where I grew up, children who know what it means to work, children who have hunger in their eyes, not greed. Your mother's name will live on in them. It will not live on in your vanity projects. 30% has been allocated to the Veterans Housing Initiative, the charity that is currently operating out of the house you used to live in. The men and women sleeping in your old bedroom fought for this country. They earned that comfort. You did not. The remaining 20%, along with the beach house I am sitting in now, has been placed in an irrevocable trust for your daughter Chloe. I smiled as I wrote her name. She is the only one of us who had the courage to walk away. She is the only one who saw the money for what it was, a trap. She refused to take a dime from me when I offered it. She got a job. She is studying hard. She has character, Marcus. She has the spine that I forgot to give you. She will not touch this money until she is 30 years old, and by then she won't need it because she will have built her own life. That is the greatest gift I can give her. The time to become herself. I looked at the page. It was filling up. And for you, Marcus, I am leaving you something more valuable than cash. I am leaving you with nothing. When you get out of prison in 5 years or 10 years, however long it takes for you to pay your debt to society, you will start at zero. You will be a middle-aged man with a criminal record and an empty bank account. It sounds terrifying, doesn't it? But it is also a clean slate. For the first time in your life, you will have to wake up and earn your breakfast. You will have to sweat for your shelter. You will have to build your own reputation because the name Jefferson won't open doors for you anymore. It might even close them. This is your chance, Marcus. This is the fire. You can burn up in it or you can be forged by it. You can spend the rest of your life hating me, blaming me, telling anyone who will listen that your father stole your birthright. Or you can stand up. You can get a job washing dishes. You can sweep floors. You can learn what a dollar actually weighs if you do that. If you find your dignity at the bottom of a mop bucket, if you come to me 10 years from now with dirty hands and a clean soul, then maybe we can have a drink. Maybe then we can be father and son. But until then, you are on your own. I signed the letter. Otis. I folded it. I put it in the envelope. I sealed it with wax, not because I was pretentious, but because I wanted it to be secure. I wanted him to be the one to break the seal. I stood up and walked to the edge of the deck. The sun had vanished completely, leaving a sky bruised with twilight purple. The ocean was dark and vast, a mirror of eternity. I felt light, physically light. The burden I had been carrying for years, the constant worry about Marcus, the constant cleanup of his messes, the constant fear that I was being used, it was all gone. I had surgically removed the tumor. It had been painful. It had been bloody. But the patient was going to survive. I wasn't just Otis the tycoon anymore. I wasn't Otis the ATM. I was just a man. I thought about Brittany serving coffee at the diner. I thought about Marcus sitting in his cell. I didn't feel hate. I didn't even feel pity anymore. I felt a strange kind of hope. It was a harsh hope, a brutal hope, but it was hope nonetheless. I had given them the bottom, and the bottom is the only place you can push off from to reach the surface. I walked back inside the house. I picked up the phone and called Steinberg. "It is done, Saul," I said. "I am mailing the letter in the morning." Good Steinberg said, his voice raspy with age and wisdom. "The trust documents are filed. The transfer to the charities is complete. Chloe's fund is locked tight. It is over, Otis. You are free." Free, I repeated. It was a strange word for a man of 76. Usually freedom is something you chase when you are young, but I realized then that freedom isn't about running away, it is about letting go. I hung up. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of wine. I put a record on the turntable. Miles Davis again, Blue and Green. The trumpet cried in the darkness, mournful but beautiful. I sat in the armchair Clara used to love. I closed my eyes. I remembered the day Marcus was born. I remembered holding him in my hands, so small, so fragile. I remembered promising him the world. "I will give you everything I never had," I had whispered to him. That was my sin. I gave him everything I never had, but I forgot to give him the things I did have. The struggle, the hunger, the pride of earning a pair of boots, the satisfaction of a job done right. A failed father isn't the man who cannot feed his children. A failed father is the man who feeds them so much they forget how to hunt. A failed father is the man who shields his children from the rain so they never learn to build a roof. I had been a failed father for 40 years, disguised as a good provider, but not anymore. I took a sip of wine. I had corrected the ledger. I had balanced the books. I looked at the photo of Clara on the mantelpiece. She looked back at me, her eyes full of secrets. "I did it, Clara," I whispered. "It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. But I did it. He is on his own." I felt a peace settle over me. It wasn't happiness. It was deeper than that. It was the quiet satisfaction of a captain who has steered his ship through a hurricane and brought it to calm waters, even if he had to cut the lifeboats loose to save the vessel. I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. I had my music. I had the ocean. I had Chloe. And for the first time in a long time, I had my self-respect. I finished the wine. I turned off the record player. I went to bed and I slept the sleep of the just. The story of Otis Jefferson, the billionaire, was over. The story of Otis the man was just beginning. We spend our lives building castles for our children, hoping they will be princes and princesses, but sometimes we only raise tyrants who eagerly await our demise to seize the throne. My son didn't just want my money, he wanted to erase my existence while consuming the fruits of my labor. By cutting him off, I didn't destroy his life. I gave him the only thing I had forgotten to give the consequence of his own actions. True inheritance isn't a bank account number, it is the character to survive without one. I disappeared to find myself, and in doing so, I finally forced him to find himself in a prison cell of his own making. True love is not about shielding our children from the storms of life. It is about teaching them how to build their own shelter. For years, I mistook dependency for loyalty and greed for need. By cutting off the financial lifeline, I didn't abandon my son. I finally gave him the opportunity to become a man. Wealth without work is a poison that rots the soul. Sometimes you have to let the people you love hit rock bottom because that is the only foundation solid enough to build a real life upon. I chose dignity over obligation, and in doing so, I saved myself. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more life stories. Let me know in the comments, would you have forgiven Marcus or did he deserve his fate? See you in the next video.